Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Global Arrival. Only I Choose Armor. Chapter 91. No, no more. John, who had early S-class strength, just disappeared. That's the genius level S-class early stage. When I saw that John was safe and sound at first, I thought Yifeng was showing mercy, but now it seems I was overthinking it. Young Master Yi is still the same young Master Yi. Kill the opponent instantly. Even if it is the steel armor that is said to be the latest technology of Blue Star and has unparalleled defense, it is like this in the hands of Yifeng. It can't go for 10 rounds. It just broke into pieces. Beaten to pieces by Yifeng. The first move broke John's steel armor, and the second move directly killed John. He was beaten into crystal and sealed in Yifeng's capture summoner. Wu Yi has been erased. It means that after John turned into that crystal, Wu Yi has been erased. He is no longer alive and has been sealed by Yifeng. Probably, but what I'm more curious about is that purple gold crystal also a genetic code? Like the law enforcement armor? I don't know this either, but that's not the point. The point is that something big happened. I didn't expect that Mr. Yifeng actually arrested John. I'm afraid Yingzhong can't hold it back anymore. Tisk, how dare they? Let's not talk about whether we, Kyushu, are afraid. The Mingji mentioned by Yifeng alone is enough to ignore the so-called threat of Yingzhong. It's true to say that, but the situation will be different in the future. It will be a troubled time. At this time, everyone in the live broadcast room slowly came to their senses. Yifeng clenched his right fist slightly. John exploded directly and turned into pieces. Everyone swallowed subconsciously. He said with a look of surprise and uncertainty. I couldn't help but wipe my eyes subconsciously, with a look of disbelief on my face. I really didn't expect Yifeng to actually do this. He couldn't help but seconds, and John was arrested and beaten into crystal for the crime of being crazy. Wu Yi has been erased by, and then put it directly into the general summoner. Seeing this scene, everyone in the live broadcast room finally understood Mingji and Yifeng's attitude. Previously, I thought Yifeng was underestimating the enemy by using base armor. Now that I think about it, it is indeed the case. The technological strength of the armor manufactured by Ares and another Blue Star world far exceeds that of this so-called steel armor. The two are not on the same level at all. Compared with Yifeng's armor, this steel armor is really a piece of junk. Although the ability to travel through time and space has not yet been demonstrated, everyone still believes it. They believe that Yifeng will not lie to them. Of course, the most important thing is that he is even stronger than John. There is nothing to say and nothing to question. The most important thing is that compared to this, everyone is still more concerned about Ying Chan's face at this time. I can't help but secretly guess, I'm afraid I'm furious now. And it promoted Yifeng to the must-kill list, and it was indeed the case. I saw, how dare he, how dare he, how dare he really do this? Slap Taka-chan in the face openly. At this time, Eagle Sauce headquarters. When Pushwan saw this scene, his face turned dark. He clenched his fists tightly and said with a look of uncertainty. His eyes were full of anger. Previously, he saw that after Yifeng's arrest was over, the arrest space dispersed, and John was still standing safe and sound. Pu Chuan smiled. Pu Chuan was happy. I feel that Yifeng is really afraid of their Yingzhong. But before he finished speaking, before he finished smiling, when he just grinned. Then I saw Yifeng majestic words fall. Suddenly, John exploded and died. He turned into crystal and was taken away by Yifeng. Pushwan's smile immediately froze, and at the same time he was filled with anger. Therefore, Pushwan's face was very ugly at this time and he was going crazy. At first glance, it looks a little scary, he said frantically. In the end, he shouted out. Even if the mutation begins, their Yingzhong status will decline rapidly. But it is still one of the 5 most powerful countries in the world. No one dares to do this yet, dares to do it openly. Even if you want to kill, do it secretly. How can anyone directly declare a crime and deal with people with the attitude of a high-ranking person? It sounds like their Yingzhong is not as good as Yifeng, or not as good as the Mingji in Yifeng's mouth. Yifeng, Mingji. Thinking of this, Zhang said angrily. Send my order to put pressure on Kyushu and make them hand over Yifeng. No, in order to show our attitude, we dispatched our Eagle Steel Armor troops. It's time for the world to see how awesome our eagle sauce is. Even when there is a sudden change, our eagle sauce is still number one. It's the overlord. Then he looked directly at the staff aside and said, a look of coldness on his face. The eagle troop is eagle sauce's ace troop. All steel armor. There are automatic and human-controlled ones. Among them, the automatic one is the weakest, but even so, it still has the power of the early stage. Moreover, with its fearlessness and powerful firepower, even a mid-level A-level existence would be inflicted with hatred on the spot. What's more, among these troops are the latest steel armors secretly developed by Yinjiang. The strength is stronger. It is the elite of the eagle sauce elite. The strength is extraordinary. Thinking of this, Yinjiang sneered again and again. Looking at Yifeng, his eyes narrowed slightly. He originally wanted to find a chance to show off his muscles. Use a war to show the fighting power of eagle sauce. Shows that they are still number one. The so-called situation of 5 countries working together does not exist at all. Now is a good time and an opportunity for Trump. Anyway, from Puxuan's point of view, it is impossible for Kyushu to fight for Yifeng alone, as long as Kyushu compromises a little. He, Trump, is the winner. Thinking of this, God is really helping me. Now that Ying Chan's public support is with me, it's a good opportunity. Puxuan said with a smile on his face. Suddenly I felt that John deserved his death. He died as a genius in exchange for the opportunity to show off his muscles. It seems worth it. Anyway, it's not a big problem that Yinjiang will produce a number one genius every few years. Thinking of this, Puxuan laughed. The staff on the sidelines raised their eyebrows. Although I know you are happy, don't show it like this. What would happen if you let the John family know? Thinking of this, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Yes, but he still spoke, turned around and left, conveying Puxuan's instructions. Ah, Kyojo, Yi Fenggang. Looking at this scene, Puxuan also slowly came to his senses. Looking at this scene, he said with a sneer. Kyushu had no dealings with them before, and even more so after the sudden change. Now it's even better, just show off your power. Think of the victory situation when the time comes. Puxuan was extremely happy in his heart. They had no idea that the elders from Jojo were also waiting for them at this time. Waiting for Puxuan's action, waiting for this opportunity to dispatch the armor corps. Directly changing the world structure, a bigger plan than Trump. Will Puxuan still be smiling like this? No one knows anymore. And just when everyone had different expressions, they were in the secret realm of heaven. Have you felt that power too? It seems that the strength of this so-called capturer's armor is much stronger than we imagined. At this time, Shadow Ba turned slightly and looked behind him. Feeling the fleeting power, his eyes narrowed slightly. He spoke slowly. Obviously, when Yifeng used his special move, even Shadow Ba was a little frightened. He didn't feel Xingtian's killing technique before. So this does not mean that the arresting general is higher than Xingtian, but it means that Yifeng's willpower has become stronger. Even just using the captor capo can give him a feeling of heart palpitations. If it were Xingtian. Thinking of this, Shadow Ba couldn't help but shudder subconsciously. Surprised and uncertain. Ah, it doesn't matter. The power of the captor is far lower than those 3 law enforcement armors, so there is nothing to fear. We can only deal with a few stupid Blue Star people. But, Kulesk heard this and spoke subconsciously. A look of disdain on his face. At the end, he seemed to have thought of something, and his tone paused slightly. If his willpower improves, he will be able to unleash the power of General Xingtian. It is a disaster. We have to start moving. Feeling the power of the capture armor used by Yifeng, Kulesk couldn't help but frown. He spoke slowly. At the end, he looked at the Yi family disciples who were coming towards them and the monsters around them. Grinning, it's just what I want, it's time for them to come. When the time comes, we will share this world together. Ying Ba heard this and came back to his senses. He grinned and said cruelly. Disciples of the Yi family. All Warcraft. Looking at this scene, I felt that there were better talents and treasures in the center. The expressions of the children of the Yi family who came here changed. As well as the monsters that were watching eagerly around them, they couldn't help but feel a little confused. What are they trying to do? What's going on with this breath? Very scary. Who is the villain? At this time, no one knew about this scene. Yin Yang's plan and the plans of Nether Demon and Shadow Ba. Everyone doesn't know, but even if they guessed Takajong's plan, Kyushu's top management had nothing to fear. In other words, it has already been prepared. Didn't take it to heart. At this time, he still continued to pay attention to the things in the secret realm of heaven. It really has to be him. At this time, Chen Wei looked at this scene. Seeing how easily Yi Feng actually arrested John, it was not a simple situation. He couldn't help but shook his head and laughed softly. There are no surprises in this ending. He doesn't want to kill these 3 people in one go, does he? Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Japan. Then Chen Wei seemed to think of something again and looked at Yi Feng, who slowly turned around and looked at the remaining 3 people. His expression couldn't help but be a little moved. He spoke slowly. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. I saw. You are really strong. You are stronger than we imagined. This is the first time I have seen someone who can use armor powers to such power. At this time, Peter looked at this scene and slowly came back to his senses. Watching Yi Feng turn his head to look at them, Peter couldn't help but narrow his eyes slightly, then slowly opened his mouth and said. A look of coldness on his face. Kirby heard this and nodded subconsciously. The same goes for Noda-suke. This is true even if he has always been hostile to Kyushu. Subconsciously he retracted the attack in his hand. The same goes for the other 2. Looking at Yi Feng with a serious face. None of the 3 of them expected Yi Feng to be able to defeat John and kill him instantly. This seemed unbelievable to them. They also felt that Yi Feng would lose. Everyone is prepared to defeat Yi Feng by force before John defeats Yi Feng and snatch the summoner from Yi Feng's hand or Yi Feng's life. Seeing this scene now, Yi Feng defeated John easily. It actually made the 3 Peters a little distracted. Face full of astonishment. Oh, then I can only say that you have little knowledge. This is just normal operation. And this is nothing, it's just ordinary combat power, if you still do this. I'm afraid I'll be scared to death in the future. When Yi Feng heard this, he seemed not to notice what the 3 of them were thinking. He smiled softly and said, still minding his own business. His eyes were full of smiles. The faces of Peter and the other 3 turned dark. Black lines all over my face. His eyes were full of anger. Are you a little too confident? How arrogant. Even the people who were paying attention couldn't help but be stunned when they saw this scene. Shaking his head and laughing. But what they didn't know was that Yi Feng was telling the truth. No matter it is the next armor upgrade of God of War Xingtian, or the future 5 elements armor, Shira, Emperor, and Flame Nava, etc. It all exceeded their imagination. But even now, it is enough for them to refresh their outlook on life again. Thinking of this, Yi Feng sneered. He patted the capture summoner on his waist. I don't know if I will die, but I do know. You are now doomed to die at our hands. At this time, Peter came back to his senses. He said coldly, a look of greed on his face. Obviously Peter has not given up his idea even now, and the same is true for Kirby beside him. Then he looked at Kirby and Noda-suke. Kirby and Peter looked at each other. Noda-suke just sneered and said nothing more. However, he still walked next to Peter in the aisle, and the 3 of them looked directly at Yi Feng side by side. Obviously planning to deal with Yi Feng together. Although they were very reluctant, Peter and the others had to admit it. Yi Feng, who can directly kill John, they are really no match. Even Noda-suke, who has always been proud of himself, has to admit this. So the best way to grasp is to deal with Yi Feng together. Tisk, predatory, this fits the style of you people very well. Okay, let's just work together and arrest you all together. By the way, let me slap those people behind you and let them know that there is a price to pay for plundering. Injustice will eventually be eliminated. Seeing this, Yi Feng didn't panic at all. On the contrary, he said calmly. At the end, his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Everyone's eyebrows were raised. I'm going. Does Mr. Yi really want to get rid of these guys together? Then now, it's not just Ying Zhong who is offended, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and Japan are all offended. The 4 major powers have all been offended by this. Although even if this is not the case, with Yi Feng's talent, he will be offended sooner or later. And this was when everyone was looking astonished and even a little worried. The next scene immediately brought everyone back to their senses. His expression was shocked, with a look of horror on his face. His expression was very shocked. I saw, but a siege. Haha, it seems I forgot to tell you. The captor actually has 5 forms. Yi Feng looked at Peter and the others, and then spoke. Although the voice is small, it can still be heard clearly by everyone. After listening to Yi Feng's words, the expressions of everyone and Peter, who had the chance to win, suddenly changed. A look of horror on his face. His expression was very astonished. The captor has 5 forms. Some people seemed to have thought of something, with expressions of uncertainty on their faces. Then I saw Yi Feng patting the summoner, and 4 armored shadows suddenly appeared around Yi Feng. Everyone was shocked. Seeing this scene, the faces of Peter and others instantly turned ugly. The situation was instantly reversed. 5 forms. I never thought you could have such a trick. At this time, Peter slowly came back to his senses. Looking at the 4 armored shadows that had surrounded the 3 of them, he spoke slowly, a gloomy look on his face. The same goes for the other 2, with gloomy faces. Even the always arrogant Nohara Suk is like this. Because they felt tremendous pressure from these armored shadows. Each one has at least the initial S-level power. And his combat power is extraordinary. Originally they wanted to beat Yi Feng, but unexpectedly they were beaten instead. This made them look a little ugly. Ah, I told you there are so many things you don't know. Seeing this, Yi Feng chuckled. He spoke slowly. Not impressed. And just when Yi Feng was about to take action. At this time Yi Feng seemed to notice something. Quote exclamation mark question mark question mark question mark question mark quote. He couldn't help but stop what he was doing and subconsciously looked behind him. There is the center of the secret realm. And just when Yi Feng seemed to notice something, everyone slowly came to their senses. Looking at this scene, there was endless discussion. These 4 phantoms. The captor has 5 forms. Is Yi Feng planning to summon his companions like he did last time, like he did in the battle with the 3rd elder of the Han family? No, to be precise, it should be to summon the other forms of the general. I think so, although there are some differences, but in general it is like this. See, so, no matter what armor Yi Feng transforms into, Yi Feng can fight alone. We have to fight with multiple armors. I don't know if Yi Feng can not only summon Fang and King Kong when he transforms into the Xingtian armor, but also other armors. For example, this captain. This. In other words, Yi Feng is an army. Walking troops. No, maybe even more powerful. At this time, listening to Yi Feng's words, Yi Feng gently patted the summoner. Just like before, 4 armored shadows appeared instantly. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but be surprised. His expression was shaken violently. He subconsciously opened his mouth and said with a look of astonishment. His expression was very shocked. I really didn't expect Yi Feng to have such a trick. They were also worried that something would happen to Yi Feng and that he would be beaten by a group of people. Now it seems that it is not a problem at all. Not at all. Obviously, Yi Feng can summon even different forms of capture. Although there are some differences, they seem to have the same purpose. Everyone was immediately surprised and horrified. Especially when discussing to the end. Everyone seems to have a new understanding of Yi Feng's strength. 1 person is enough to compare with an army. I can't help but have a new understanding of Yi Feng's strength, and I am in awe. He gasped subconsciously. At this time, it was not just the people in the live broadcast room. There are many people who have this idea at this time, and everyone is paying attention to this scene. All have similar thoughts. I couldn't help but suck in the air-conditioned air from the building. Especially those people like Ying Zhang, their faces are so gloomy. Is this guy's combat strength enough to compare with an army? At this time, Eagle Sauce headquarters. The secretary walked in slowly. Apparently the secretary has completed Puxuan's task of investigating recent events in Kyushu, as well as information about Yi Feng and Mingji. At this time, she was holding the report for Puxuan to review. At this time, Puxuan saw this scene and looked at the secretary walking over. Puxuan said slowly, with a dark line on his face. His face was very gloomy. The secretary was stunned. Yes, and I think things are more terrifying than this, and the results are even more terrifying than we thought. Then he slowly came back to his senses. He nodded to Pushwan and glanced at the screen. He spoke slowly, a serious look on his face. Pushwan couldn't help but look stunned. You mean his combat power is more than this? Then he seemed to think of something and narrowed his eyes slightly. He spoke slowly, a serious look on his face. Right. If the news is true, Yi Feng's talent and his armor are more terrifying than we imagined. The secretary heard and nodded. He spoke. At the same time, he handed the information he collected directly to Pu Chuan. His expression was very serious. I have to say that Yingjiang's intelligence agency is still very powerful, and the collection was completed in a short time. Of course, this is also related to the fact that Kyushu has no intention of hiding it, so it can be collected so quickly. As for the formation of the Armor Legion, not to mention them, even the top executives in Kyushu didn't know about it. But the winding was so fast that the secretary was a bit surprised. Although I can't hide it, isn't it too exaggerated? Are those people in Kyushu so optimistic about Yi Feng? Aren't you afraid that other people will cause trouble for him? Don't even plan to take a cover. But then the secretary remembered that Kyushu had already released live broadcasts at this time, and even added fuel to the flames. The matter of arresting Sealed John has been seen by many people and is known to everyone. Thinking of this, the secretary narrowed his eyes slightly. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. Do they have other plans in Kyushu, or have they dug a hole and are just waiting for us to jump in? No, to be precise, they are so confident and fearless. What makes those people so confident? Whispered softly. Thinking secretly. Oh, Pushwan didn't know what his secretary was thinking at this time. Listening to the secretary's thoughts, Pushwan slowly came back to his senses. The eyes narrowed slightly, and the white matter fell. Then he took it directly and started reading. However, this look directly caused Pushwan's expression to change. The first thing that caught Pushwan's eyes was Nether Demon, these three characters. But Pushwan doesn't care about the Nether Demon. In his opinion, his Daejong is invincible. The mere Nether Demon is nothing to be afraid of. What Pushwan cares about is Yi Feng's godlike miracles and his godlike achievements. A Nether Demon with strong combat power right after awakening, AB level early stage Nether Demon. Then 2 nights later, in just 2 days, Yi Feng fought and killed the Nether Demon who had an early A level and a mid-level B with his teamwork. World of Warcraft Forest, Deep Sea Secret Realm, Battle of the Imperial Capital, etc. Those kinds of leapfrog battles are almost as fast as rocket upgrades. It seems that Pushwan is frightened. It felt like my heart was going to jump out of my chest. Let Pushwan secretly smack his tongue. Especially when he saw Yi Feng's description of Xingtian armor, Pushwan was even more shocked. Mingji and Ares transform together. It has something to do with the Ming realm. The potential is unlimited. As long as the mind is strong, the Xingtian armor will be stronger. Boom. Seeing this, Pushwan's expression immediately changed. Astonished, subconsciously looking towards Yi Feng who was fighting on the screen. The captor's armor is under Xingtian's armor. But that's it, the captain's armor has such power. So what about Xingtian who is above him? How much strength can Yi Feng exert to Xingtian now, or how strong can he be? And if you are in the state of Xingtian armor, you can really summon other armors at the same time. Then strength is really not as simple as he thinks now. The result was just as the secretary said, it was worse than he thought. Mingji, thinking back to the origin of these armors. Pushwan said slowly, a look of coldness on his face. Let all intelligence personnel put down what they are doing now. I want to know the information about the Ming realm as soon as possible. And all the information about this person, Yi Feng. Then Pu Chuan breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the figure on the screen, his eyes narrowed slightly. He spoke slowly, a look of coldness on his face. When Yi Feng explained the situation earlier, Pushwan was still unimpressed, not just by Pushwan, but by others as well. Just handle it as normal and do a simple investigation. But now it seems that they were obviously wrong. It is very possible that the bright world really exists. This caused Trump to directly increase the importance of this matter and plan to fully investigate it. At the end, he narrowed his eyes slightly. Look at the figure standing proudly on the screen. A look of coldness on his face. Also, let the Pentagon quickly carry out the tasks I assigned. By the way, let's tell those old stubborns about this and let them know how important it is. It's worse than we thought. This Yifeng is very dangerous and is very detrimental to our Yingjiang. If necessary, please contact John's family. I think they will be happy to fully support us. Then Puxuan seemed to think of something, and then spoke. Although he is just a businessman, he still has the acumen that Puxuan should have. He felt a huge threat from those materials. Prevent them from returning to the first place and become their dream. As for whether it can be used by their eagle sauce, Yifeng was able to decisively arrest and seal John. He was completely indifferent to their Yingjiang, and his tone was even filled with contempt. Obviously impossible, and those who hinder Yingjiang even make Yingjiang feel threatened. Whether it's Yifeng's previous life or this world, then we can only destroy. Thinking of this, Puxuan's eyes were full of coldness. The idea of dispatching the steel armor troops to put pressure became more and more determined. That's why I supplement and urge. Yes. At this time, the secretary listened to Puxuan's words. Can't help but be stunned. He seemed to have thought of something and was about to say something. But he felt the coldness and coercion emanating from Puxuan. He couldn't help but shook his head. Maybe she just thinks too much. Thinking of this, the secretary slowly came back to his senses. Didn't say anything. Instead, he nodded directly and said. Then he turned around and left. Carry out the orders issued by President Trump. Seeing this scene, Puxuan breathed a sigh of relief. As Puxuan's order was issued, Yingjiang, one of the 5 major powers, suddenly began to operate. Sir, actually things may not be as bad as we think. It's just an exaggeration to say that it's not certain. The so-called unclear definition is just what Yifeng said casually. Quote exclamation mark question mark question mark question mark question mark quote. At this time, the guard on the side saw this scene. Watching Puxuan sweating profusely, only now did the guards realize that Puxuan was already soaked with sweat. Obviously, the impact just now had a great impact on Trump. Seeing this scene, the guard couldn't help but speak slowly. Counseled, a serious look on his face. When Puxuan heard this, his expression softened slightly. It has relaxed a lot. However, before the guard could finish speaking, the next scene happened. This directly caused the guard's expression to change. It also shocked Puxuan and everyone who was paying attention. His brows frowned subconsciously, a look of astonishment on his face. What's going on here? At this time, everyone suddenly noticed Yifeng's actions. His expression was startled. Then he slowly came back to his senses, with a solemn look on his face. What is that I just saw? In the secret realm of heaven. Boom! A shaking sound suddenly came, and the entire secret realm was shaken. Shaking and shaking. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression suddenly changed. This is especially true for everyone outside the secret realm of heaven. Feel the deepest. What's going on inside? Seeing this scene, Chen Wei stood up directly. He spoke slowly. His expression was very solemn. She felt a very powerful aura from inside. At the same time, Yifeng also came to his senses. It seems that another mutation has occurred, and this breath seems to be an old friend. This is so, the time to send you on your way should be earlier. Feeling this powerful aura, he slowly spoke. He seemed to have guessed who did it. He couldn't help but sneer. Exclamation mark question mark question mark question mark question mark. And listening to Yifeng's words, Peter and others also came to their senses. Looking at Yifeng in surprise. Old friend. At this time, they were also confused about what was going on in this secret realm. Now that I heard Yifeng's words, I couldn't help but feel a little confused. But then listening to Yifeng's last words, his expression instantly became alert. Looking at Yifeng with a serious face. At the same time, his body was emitting light and he was ready to fight. You must also be curious about what the other states of the captain are. Then as you wish. Seeing this, Yifeng said with a nonchalant expression. Didn't take it seriously at all. What? Listening to Yifeng's words, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. However, before he finished speaking, his expression suddenly changed. The royal bee ordered me to capture the general, the unstoppable courage, to capture the General Aloy. The Sky Bat ordered me to capture the general with the fighting power of thousands of troops, Kogoshi. King Shark ordered me to capture a general with the strength of the heavenly soldiers and divine generals, and to capture the general Rui Fu. I saw sounds falling one after another. Suddenly, powerful auras appeared instantly, and the phantoms of these armors became more solid. By the end, the momentum was rising. Boom! The entire secret realm couldn't help but be shaken, competing with the aura coming from the center. And the supernatural light emitted by those three people also disappeared immediately. It almost broke into pieces. Seeing this scene, everyone's expressions changed. His expression was shocked, and he was directly attracted by this scene, with a look of shock on his face. Watching this scene blankly. Capture point initial. Capture Capo. Capture Aloy. Capture Egos. Capture Reeves. Looking at this scene, looking at Yi Feng's proud figure, everyone's hearts were shaken. Strength, courage, fighting power, strength. Is this considered the power of origin? Or is it the original power of human kindness? Looking at this scene, Chen Wei murmured softly. Heart shaking. This is Mingji Captain. Essential power. At this time, Chen Wei was shocked. Looking at the scene in front of me, listening to Yi Feng's words, and looking at the shapes of these captives, they each represent different powers and different forms. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. His expression was very astonished. I was thinking to myself. Keep thinking about what happened before. The power of the three major law enforcement armors, Xingtian, King Kong, and Feng respectively represent the infiniteness of heaven and earth, the power of mountains and seas, and Fengalin Hu Ocean. Now, in addition to the initial state, the 5 forms of this basic armor capturer, the other 4 forms of power respectively represent the 4 powers of force, courage, combat power and rigidity. The former is nature and natural creation, while the latter obviously corresponds to human beings, their goodness, and the power to move forward courageously. No, or its biological power. From this point of view, nature is indeed higher than human beings and living things, and the law enforcement armor is indeed richer than the capture armor. What Chen Wei cares about is the power used by the basic armor of the Ming realm, and the middle-level law enforcement armor is basically linked to all things. If these powers were given to them by the bright world, or given by someone, then who could it be? What kind of existence is the Ming realm? What kind of existence are the emperors and rulers of the Ming realm? Thinking of this, Chen Wei couldn't help but frown slightly. He said with a look of surprise and uncertainty. Recalling Yi Feng's previous summary of the basic system of the Ming realm, his expression couldn't help but condense. Although Mingji comes from the 5-dimensional universe, basically every pair of Mingji armors now symbolizes some kind of power and certain attributes connected to everything. This kind of power really frightened Chen Wei. It is really hard to imagine what kind of existence is above Xingtian armor. What does it mean? And what kind of existence would a leader with such armor be like? Is it really a god? At the end, Chen Wei's expression condensed. Surprised and uncertain, feeling in awe. At the same time, I was full of curiosity, wondering if Yi Feng could transform into other armors. By the way, the members of the Ming Realm Pharaoh's court and even the Ming Realm Emperor were summoned. Thinking of this, Chen Wei shook her head, chuckled. This is impossible, even if he whispered softly. Although Yi Feng has summoned many armors from the Ming Realm forces. But they are all from the middle and lower classes, but it can be from the upper class or even the top class. Chen Wei thought it was impossible and too scary. He shook his head and waved away these miscellaneous thoughts. Concentrate and look towards the screen. Naturally, Chen Wei was not the only one who had this idea at this time. Many elites who paid attention to this scene and saw it also thought of this. Terrified. This is especially true for those who know the affairs of the Ming realm. She had the same idea as Chen Wei, and was confused. Of course, there is no Chen Wei's final thoughts, but that's the case. It also made everyone look shocked. Maybe I can only say that this is very 5-dimensional. Is this the power of the 5th dimension? At this time, in the Imperial Palace. When the old man saw this scene, he slowly came to his senses. Sighed softly, whispered softly, a look of emotion on his face. Then he seemed to think of something, and he couldn't help but frown. Look towards the corner of the screen, and that is the center of the secret realm. What was that explosion sound before? Could it be that something happened to the secret realm of heaven, which has been safe and sound all this time? And looking at this situation, it can actually compete with the capturer's armor aura released by Yi Feng. You know, the most powerful one at this time has reached. He spoke slowly. His eyes were full of surprise. At the end, I couldn't help but feel worried. You must know that when the time for entering the secret realm has passed, you can no longer enter it. Only allowed out but not in. He just hoped things weren't as bad as he thought. But in this scene, the aura emitted can actually compete with Yi Feng's aura. It's really mind-blowing. You must know that Yi Feng's strength has now reached midterm, mid-S level. This captain is in the early stage even in his worst state. So strong. I have never felt such a powerful atmosphere. It's so strong. The captor is at the early stage of S level, while the captor capo has the ultimate strength at the early stage of level 5, which is infinitely close to the mid-level of level 5. And starting from Captain Arroy, it's mid-level 5. The strongest one among them, Rufu, has reached an astonishing mid-S level ultimate power. And as one body, the explosive fusion of the 5 auras is enough to compete with the peak S class. Strong, really strong. No wonder Peter and the others were directly shattered by this momentum. Being overwhelmed by the momentum, who can withstand this? Is this the true power of the captain's armor? But is it possible that this is just a fox pretending to be a tiger? I don't believe that anyone can use the armor to this extent. A single piece of armor has such strength. It is unprecedented and unprecedented. Even the summoned armor phantoms are all captured. I don't believe it. It may be 2708. At this time, everyone in the live broadcast room was watching this scene. I couldn't help but swallow secretly. He spoke slowly. His eyes were full of shock. Feeling the power emanating from these 5 armors, especially at this time, Yi Feng directly transformed from the capture capo back to the initial capture state. With an audience attitude, watch the 3 Peters being arrested and surrounded by the 4 forms. Even more so, he said with a puzzled look on his face. To be able to be so leisurely in battle. There is only one person left. Anyway, no one has ever seen a situation where when one versus many people or in a one-to-many situation, the one with many ends up being beaten up, and the one with one becomes the audience. It really surprised everyone. The attention was directly attracted to Yi Feng. At this moment, no one cares about what is going on in the center of the secret realm. Except for those elites, it can only be said that this is the gap between ordinary people and elites. It is easy to be attracted by situations that are beyond your own understanding of things. When you come back to your senses, it is already too late. There was endless discussion. It seems that there is a new understanding of the captor's armor. Is this the captain of the Ming realm? Of course, many people think that this is just an empty shell. You must know that in the past, the strongest successors of armor abilities were only B-level strength. And it is unimaginable that Yi Feng can exert the S-level power of the armor. It's a new record. Now even the summoned armor phantom has such strength. It's really unbelievable and shocking. And there is more than one person who thinks like this. Seeing the Yingjiang headquarters at this time, Puxuan was also directly attracted by this scene. This may be just an exception and cannot be replicated. Besides, there is an idiom in JoJo that says, false appearance only, a fox pretends to be a tiger's power. I guess it just looks so powerful on the surface, actually. At this time, the guard looked at this scene, feeling Puxuan's expression of disbelief. He couldn't help but speak slowly, a serious look on his face. After listening to the guard's words, Puxuan calmed down a little. Just an illusion. The fox pretends to be the tiger's power. That is to say, looks good but looks useless. Thinking of this, Puxuan came back to his senses a little. That makes sense. You said, are you sure this is a fake show of force? This is a tiger. No, it's a lion. Thinking of this, Puxuan nodded subconsciously. He spoke subconsciously. I felt a lot more relaxed inside. Apparently some people in the live broadcast room have similar thoughts. However, before Puxuan could finish speaking, he was halfway through. As if he noticed something, his eyes bulged. Looking at the scene on the screen, his expression suddenly changed. A look of shock. Not only these people, but everyone in the live broadcast room who was talking about being happy was watching this scene. He also came back to his senses instantly. His mouth opened subconsciously, with a look of disbelief on his face. This is impossible. It's actually true. I saw. Capo, Aloy, Egos, Rufu. I didn't expect you to have such strength. At this time, Kirby touched his chest. Wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Yifeng looked at Yifeng as if nothing had happened, as if he was watching a show. He said with a gloomy look. His face was a little pale. Obviously, the superpower was interrupted and was directly shaken away. Very uncomfortable. The other two, he was. But. I think this is just a show. Although your momentum is very strong, this is your limit. The reason why you are not moving now is obviously because you have attacked the final crossbow. Am I right? Compared to Peter and Kirby who looked desperate, Nodosuke saw this scene at this time. Then he sneered. Looking at Yifeng, he slowly spoke. He looked sure of victory. It was as if he had already seen through everything. Yifeng couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This guy's imagination is too rich. It seems like I focused all my skill points on momentum. However, some people still believe this nonsense, just like those outside. Human beings will always find appropriate reasons to defend things that are beyond their understanding. And this is obviously the case now, but obviously I thought wrong. But they thought it was right and saw through everything, Yifeng's reality. You mean? Peter listened to Nodosuke's words and cheered up. He looked at Nodosuke with a hopeful look on his face and said. He had no idea about this bottomless and ungrateful Eastern monkey, but now he listened to Nodosuke's words. Hope rises in my heart again, and my senses feel much better. The same goes for Kirby on the side. Originally, he had given up hope and was ready to accept surrender, but now he heard Nodosuke's words. I regained my confidence again. His face was full of seriousness. Nodosuke's senses improved a little. In other words, these Westerners never had a good impression of Nodosuke from the beginning to the end. In the East, only Kyushu can enter the Dharma eyes. For these two, Japan has 3 swords and no bottom line. They really don't catch a cold. I don't look down on it at all, even if the other party is also one of the 5 powerful countries. Therefore, John never thought of looking for Nodosuke before. If Nodosuke had not come uninvited, they would not have brought this person with them. But now the two of them feel much better about Nodosuke. That's right, as long as we concentrate all our efforts to break through, who will be dead when the time comes. Feeling the gazes of the two men, Nodosuke smiled slightly. Clearly enjoying it, he couldn't help but look at Yifeng and Gigi smiled and licked his lips. A look of confidence. Okay, these are the 5. Peter and Kirby nodded directly after hearing this. Then in Yifeng's speechless gaze, he braced himself hard and gritted his teeth. Unleash your own powers. Paladin, priest. Suddenly, a holy white light appeared in the secret realm. But in Yifeng's opinion, it seemed a bit disgusting. Hypocritical. Sure enough, whoever believes in it is what the faith is. Looking at this scene, Yifeng said softly. But compared to this, I'm more curious about why you came here. Looking at your situation, you don't seem to need the summoner in my hand. Yifeng looked at Nodosuke and said slowly. A look of curiosity on his face. Of course it's because I want your life. Nodosuke heard this and sneered. It seems that Yifeng's true identity is already known. He couldn't help but said with murderous intent. He looked unconcerned. Also expect to see horror from Yifeng. However, what disappointed him and even made him angry was. Oh, is that so? Sure enough, no matter which world you are in, you are all like this, murderous. If you are like this, I will arrest you for the crime of hatred. Yifeng heard this and said lightly. The sentence for Nodosuke has been decided. Nodosuke's face turned dark. Masked Dragon Knight. He didn't say much after that. Instead, he directly releases his own abilities. Suddenly a familiar warrior appeared in Yifeng's eyes. Looking at this equipment, Yifeng couldn't help but blink. Dragon Rider. I didn't expect you to be the successor of Dragon Rider. Said softly. Nodosuke couldn't help but grin. I was about to say something proudly. However, Yifeng's next words made Nodosuke's face turn completely dark. Every successor of Dragon Rider has justice in his heart. People like you are rare. I can only say that you are the worst Dragon Rider successor in history. You can be called a shame to the Dragon Rider successor. Forget it, Hao Wanghao, you attack me and let my people from the Ming realm arrest you and bring you to justice. Arrest you for the crime of anger. Yi Feng shook his head and said lightly. And listening to Yi Feng's words, everyone couldn't help but be surprised. A look of surprise. Yi Feng is getting to know Longqi. Or do you mean you know the dragon rider himself? Even people from Japan can't help but be impressed by it. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. But after hearing Yi Feng's last words, his expression immediately changed. The same is true for people in Eastern and Western Europe. His face instantly turned ugly. How dare he? However, Yi Feng told them that he was really brave. Having your back against the bright world is not imaginary. If you are scared, the face of the five-dimensional universe will be lost. So Yi Feng couldn't help but dare to think more clearly than these rulers, which shocked and angered them. I saw. The moment of justice has arrived. I saw Yi Feng swiping the summoner slightly before Notisuke could say anything. The same is true for the other four armored figures. As Yi Feng said these words, the arrest space was opened in a unified manner. Suddenly Notisuke and others were horrified and in disbelief, under the astonished eyes of everyone. Directly surrounded by arrest space. At the same time, majestic voices sounded. I, Captain Aloy, am arresting you for the crime of robbery. Follow me to the court of the Ming realm for trial, and you can be arrested without mercy. I, Captain Egos, are officially arresting you for the crime of infatuation. I, Captain Rufu, have officially arrested you for the crime of anger. Follow me to the court of the Ming realm to accept the trial. You can be arrested without mercy. Voices sounded one after another, shocking everyone's hearts. The newly raised hopes of Peter and others were instantly extinguished and turned into despair. His face was full of horror. Paladin Peter is guilty of greed. Priests are guilty of infatuation. Dragoon shames Noda for helping him to commit a crime. Greed, anger and ignorance. Listening to Yi Feng's arrest and trial, everyone was shocked. Extremely shocked. Greedy, anger and ignorance. Three major sins. I didn't expect that each of these three people has a sin. But speaking of these three major sins, are they the three major sins recognized by the bright world? Or are we talking about the origin of sin? I haven't seen Yi Feng mention other sins, they are basically these three. I think that's right. In our ancient JoJo proverb, greed, anger, and ignorance are called three poisons, also known as three stains and three fires. These three poisons pose a huge threat to human beings' physical and mental health. Harming the body and mind will cause people to sink into the cycle of life and death, so they are also regarded as the root of evil. The root of evil in a nutshell. Greed generally refers to greed, having to get something, greed, and this is indeed consistent with Peter. After all, if it weren't for greed, he would not be here, be an enemy of Yi Feng, and even want to put Yi Feng at risk. Death place. And anger refers to being irrational and without any principles, but it is indeed consistent with Nohara Suke. He acts without principles and is irrational. Even crazy. When you say that, I feel that the whole of Japan is like this. No, to be precise, they have been like this since ancient times. When did they have principles in their actions? There is simply no bottom line, so crazy and scary. You are right. As for being crazy, does it mean that you don't know the difference between right and wrong, and you don't know good from evil? But why would Kirby be sentenced to this crime? After all, Kirby and Peter both came here because of size. Is it because Kirby's profession is a priest? I think Yi Feng seems to hate those holy lights. I'm not cold at all. Does Yi Feng mean that the gods in the West are hypocritical, behave erratically, and are ignorant? Although it is true that the so-called spread of faith, the Red Cross Crusade, and the Age of Discovery have only brought plunder and killing, but they still claim to be righteous, even today #Tet. So, it's true. If there is a God in the West, it's really hypocritical. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. If you say that, if Yi Feng talks about their God like this, wouldn't it offend the people of Western Europe in one fell swoop? No, in fact, it has been offended now. Both Eastern and Western Europe have been offended. In short, the West has been offended. And to be precise, I offended three of them at once. No, with the addition of Eagle Sauce, the four major countries have already been offended. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. I can only say that he is worthy of being young Master Yi. Looking at this scene at this time, listening to Yifeng's words. Listening to Yifeng's words, although he is a middle-class student, he is full of majesty and makes people subconsciously feel awe. Everyone was shocked, he said with a look of astonishment. They were talking endlessly and looked very shocked. Greed, anger and ignorance. Especially when, following the explanations from insiders, everyone suddenly discovered that the three major sins of the Ming realm could be explained in the language of Kyushu. When it can be connected with Kyushu, everyone is even more surprised. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. Is it possible that Kyushu is really connected to the Ming realm? As early as when Yifeng mentioned Mingji, everyone connected Mingji with Kyushu. I think the two may be related, because the armor ability is unique to Kyushu. Now combined with this scene, it is even more surprising. His eyes were full of shock and uncertainty. Not just everyone in the live broadcast room, but Chen Wei and others saw this scene. With their knowledge, even if no one explains it, I also know what's going on. Contacted decisively. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. Is it possible that Mingji and Kyushu are really connected? Or maybe it means that the world is actually the power of Kyushu. Quote exclamation mark question mark quote. At this time, in the Jojo Imperial Palace. Seeing this scene, Mr. J slowly came back to his senses. He murmured with a look of astonishment. I was thinking secretly in my heart. My eyes couldn't help but be filled with excitement, and I was a little emotional. If this is the case, then Kyushu is really lucky. There is a 5-dimensional universe, and the forces of the 5 dimensions are backed by it. It is very majestic to imagine. What monster, what enemy, you can walk sideways in Blue Star without fear. Maybe the armor power is actually the #1 power in the world. No, I can't say it will be now. Thinking of this, Mr. J couldn't help but clenched his fists and looked at the scene in front of him with excitement. It was obviously different from the people in the live broadcast room who were frightened and worried as they talked. Mr. J was confident, without any hesitation. If the 4 of them dare to cause trouble, there will be no return for them. With this guess, it seemed that the previous worries were overwhelming. The expression is very serious. Of course, Mr. J also plans to ask Yifeng after the matter is over. Although Mr. J has confirmed this guess, the bearded old man, who also saw this scene and was a little worried, looked at it with a look of astonishment and confusion on his face. Mr. J, what's wrong with him? Is there any trump card? Looking at this scene, his face changed. The old man with a beard, who had become more confident, said with a look of astonishment. Then he shook his head and thought about what to do next. Yingzhong will definitely send troops to put pressure, and the other 3 countries may assist. It is impossible to hand it over. Yifeng is a treasure. If you really want to hand him over, you should kill him first. Anyway, it is impossible for the bearded old man to do that. So what to do? Thinking of this, the bearded old man had an inexplicable headache. Little did he know that Yifeng and Mr. J had already prepared for this matter. In other words, I am no longer afraid of threats from anyone else. They are even waiting for an opportunity, waiting for people like them to fall into the trap. If he knew, I'm afraid the bearded old man would be shocked. But obviously Mr. J didn't express his thoughts, and naturally he could only continue to think hard. What the bearded old man didn't know was that there was more than one person who had the same idea as Mr. J. At this time, Chen Wei watched this scene without worrying about the subsequent retaliation from the West and Japan. Instead, he smiled softly, twisted his hair, he spoke slowly. He really has the courage to do so. He is worthy of being the heir to many Ming realm armors. Are you greedy, angry and foolish? It does fit the temperament of those people from the West and Japan. A smile on his face. But, does Yifeng know about dragon riders? Could it be that he has seen the true form of dragon rider? Or are those knights somehow related to the bright world? Then Chen Wei seemed to think of something again and recalled the scene at that time. Whispered softly, he was thinking secretly, with a look of confusion on his face. To prepare for things to come together, ask Yifeng. She believes Yifeng will be happy to tell her. Thinking of this, Chen Wei nodded secretly. He didn't say much. Instead, he continued to cheer up and read. After all, things in the secret realm of heaven are not over yet. However, this look made Chen Wei frown. A look of astonishment on his face. Quote exclamation mark question mark question mark question mark quote. Yi Feng, are you serious? Not only Chen Wei, but others also came to their senses instantly. He looked over subconsciously, a look of surprise on his face. I saw, just when everyone had different expressions and talked a lot. At this time, in the secret realm of heaven. At this time, the three Peters were separated in the capture space. This suddenly surprised the three Peters. Peter faces the captor Aloy. Kirby faces captor Egos, and Noharasuke faced the captor Reef. The three of them faced each other in the captor's armor. The captor, Capo, stood aside. His face was full of coldness and majesty. He and Yi Feng surrounded the three people's path. Although Yi Feng is very confident, he will never leave any escape route for the other party. The lion needs to go all out to beat the rabbit, let alone Yi Feng. He is not an arrogant villain. The secret realm of heaven is still very unstable. It's not peaceful, so it should be so. Before the three Peters could recover, they heard the arrest and trial declaration from Yi Feng. The three Peters looked ugly. Especially when they felt the powerful aura that exploded as the last word of Yi Feng fell, it directly overwhelmed them. Cold sweat dripping down. The body was shaking. I was trembling, shaking, and shivering. His face immediately turned pale. Even Nodosuke, who has always been proud, is like this. Looking at this scene and feeling the other person's aura, his face instantly turned pale. Especially Peter and Kirby. Until now, they didn't believe it was all true. Yi Feng is not pretending to be a powerful person, nor is he trying to show off his power. It's not just a show, but a real strength. The Sanfu armor in front of me really has the strength of mid-S level. And it's not an ordinary mid-level S class. Not the kind they can deal with. Especially in this arrest space, this is even more true. It's over now. It makes them very uncomfortable and physically depressed. Strength is difficult to display perfectly. Feeling all this, Peter and others couldn't help crying and said. A look of despair. At the same time, he was full of resentment towards Nodosuke. It is because of him that they can experience the pleasure of turning from hope to despair. And he will also face the danger of being captured and sealed by Yi Feng. Even though they surrender, Yi Feng will not let them go. But that's not the case with Peter and Kirby. I feel that as long as they surrender before, Yi Feng will not arrest and seal them. Therefore, how much I hated Noharasuke's senses before. Hateful. Thinking of this, Peter said angrily. And Yi Feng doesn't care what these people are thinking. Feel the momentum coming from the center of the secret realm, the aura that is getting stronger and stronger. Looks like we have to fight as quickly as possible. Yi Feng couldn't help but murmured softly. Then he turned to look at these three people with a cold look on his face. Then directly control the capture and armor up. The function of the Genesis bracelet is that it can be summoned by just one team. But now it seems that even one armor can be summoned in different forms, and it can also be controlled by Yi Feng. So when Yi Feng was preparing for a quick victory, the arrestor. The armor also began to take action. Armor Beast King Bee General. Armor Beast Sky Bat General. Armored Beast King Shark General. I saw Yi Feng's words falling, and I saw the armor of the three Peters. Immediately swiping the summoner, three armored beasts appeared together. Boom! The capturing power of the three major forms of Aloy, Egos, and Roof also increased accordingly. The momentum is greatly enhanced. When everyone saw this, they couldn't help but be shocked. Looking at this armored beast, there was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. King Bee, Sky Bat, King Shark. This made everyone subconsciously connect Yi Feng's lines for summoning these armors. Royal Bee's order, Heavenly Bat's order, King Shark's order. They thought it was just what Yi Feng said casually, but now that they think about it, it doesn't seem to be the case. Could there be some contact during this period? However, before everyone could think about it, Yi Feng didn't care what everyone was thinking about. The arrest process starts directly with Yi Feng's voice. Bee General's arresting sword King Bee slashes through the air to kill. The bat will catch the gun, the sky bat will penetrate the clouds and kill. The shark will catch the axe. The king shark breaks through the waves and kills. I saw the voices falling one by one, under the horrified eyes of Peter and the other three. The armor he faced directly summoned the weapon. When the armored beast was summoned, the three Peters were already on the verge of collapse. On the verge of collapse. But now, as the voices fell, he looked at the armor he faced summoning weapons. The breath increased even more. The majesty of the arresters made them even more breathless. His body was even more trembling. Fear from the soul. Seeing this scene, I completely collapsed. No. Please let me go. Peter and Kirby looked at this scene and couldn't help but beg for mercy loudly. Completely different from before. Not only them, but also Nodosuke. You can't kill me. My brother is also the successor of Dragon Rider. You can't kill me. At this time, Nodosuke also lost his previous calmness. Feeling the pain and despair from the soul. That told him it was all real. Recalling the scene of John being sealed, he immediately broke through the defense and was frightened. He said in horror, I regret it so much. Why did I join in the fun in the first place? But it was too late. I just saw. I saw Yifeng turning a blind eye to these, and then under the horrified eyes of the three Peters. The armors of the captors he faced directly moved out, killing them one after another. King Bee kills in the air. The sky bat penetrates the cloud and kills. King Shark breaks through the waves and kills. No, under the horrified gazes of Peter and the other three, under the astonishment of everyone, and under the angry gazes of senior officials from the West and Japan. Pass right through. Then the arrest space dissipated. Boom. With an explosion, it was directly broken into pieces, leaving only the crystals in place. Injustice has been destroyed. Then it's time to get over it. As Yifeng recovered these armor phantoms, these crystals were also directly collected into the summoner by Yifeng. I saw Yifeng lightly swiping the summoner and laughing softly. He turned his head slightly and looked towards the center of the secret realm. He spoke slowly. At the same time, the armor was directly disbanded. Yifeng, are you okay? At this time, Zhao Qing looked at this scene and breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he subconsciously ran over. When Yifeng arrived, he said with a concerned look on his face. By the way, how did you remove the armor? The matter probably hasn't been resolved yet. I can feel that it's not simple there. Very dangerous. Then, Zhao Qing seemed to think of something. Without waiting for Yifeng to say anything, he looked at Yifeng's appearance. The beautiful eyebrows couldn't help but frown. Then he spoke. Of course it's to rush there. It's not easy now. I am naturally doing this to summon a better car. Yifeng heard this and smiled softly. He spoke slowly. At the same time, he took out the Xingtian armor summoner with a smile on his face. It's time for the burning horse to appear. And hearing these words, it was these words that immediately made everyone stunned. I was immediately dumbfounded. You still have a car. I still have the armor and a car. Yifeng. At this time, watching Yifeng arrest and seal the three Peters with his own hands. Especially after seeing Yifeng's arrest charges in Kirby's trial, the Western Pope suddenly became angry. His fists were clenched tightly. The figure looking at the screen widened his eyes. Shouted loudly. His face was full of anger. He never dreamed that someone would provoke the Holy See. Moreover, he was also tried and convicted of the crime of infatuation. This made the Pope very angry, especially when he knew what the sin of obsession was. He is blaspheming and insulting the Lord. And if you carry out judgments arbitrarily, the bright world should be regarded as a cult, a satanic religion, and a demonic force. Enemies of my Lord. And Yifeng is also the lifelong place of my Holy See. His crime will go to hell. I saw the Pope standing at the foot of the cross. Watching the live broadcast, Raime said happily. The sound spread throughout the Holy See. This made all the priests tremble and dare not speak out. Afraid of angering this Pope. Because this Pope is said to be able to communicate with gods living in the five-dimensional universe and has great divine power. And he is moody, so they don't dare to touch this person at this time. Getting angry. Not only the Western European Holy See, but also the Eastern European royal courts and Japanese high-level officials at this time. Furious. Especially Japan, it seems that Yifeng said that his heart went up to him, and his defense was directly broken. It is said that the Japanese ruler was so angry that he threw several priceless tea sets and bottles of porcelain. Many servants were implicated. However, they didn't get angry for long. Yi Feng's words came immediately. It immediately made everyone look stunned. His face was filled with astonishment. His brows were furrowed tightly. His attention was directly attracted and he looked over subconsciously. Astonished. Not only them, but also everyone in the live broadcast room at this time. Armor vehicle. It means Xingtian armor's vehicle. Does the armor also come with a car? Do you want it to be so fantasy? This is the first time I've seen such a superpower. By the way, do you know, Sister Wang? You should know, right? I think the relationship between Sister Wang and Mr. Yi is still very good. Why don't you tell me about it and introduce me? TCH, you're overthinking it. Sister Wang is just young Master Yi's attendant. How could the attendant know what the master means? I bet 50 cents that she won't know. He said with a look of surprise and uncertainty. There were even many people asking Wang Shui in the secret realm to explain. This made Wang Shui, who was also stunned. Some heads get bigger. Looking at Yi Feng holding the Xingtian summoner, his face was full of confusion. Let me explain. I want it too, but the key is that she really doesn't know. Looking at this information, Wang Shui felt her hair becoming more and more ruffled by the cold wind. Especially when I saw the end, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. I said, I am not a follower. But I really don't know. But just when everyone's faces were full of astonishment, Wang Shui was a little confused, and Zhao Qing looked a little stunned. These people obviously believed it and were full of curiosity about the car Yi Feng mentioned. But there are also many people who dismiss this. I think Yi Feng just said it casually, not worth mentioning. Just sensationalizing. These people are pro-foreign, as well as Trump, the Pope and others as a group. Dismissive and full of distrust. Oh, car. According to this Kyushu native named Yi Feng, does the armor also have a car? So magical. Why does it feel like it's more advanced than our steel armor? At this time, Zheng listened to Yi Feng's words. He slowly came back to his senses. Looking at this scene, he frowned slightly. He said to the guard standing beside him. A look of disbelief. At the end, his face looked a little gloomy. And be prepared to open a trumpet account and enter the JoJo Live broadcast room. Ready to talk. Don't doubt Trump, he can really do it. As long as he is convinced, then he dares to do it. At this time, Puxuan was already furious, especially when he saw the joy of the people in Kyushu. Even more angry. But at this time, Yi Feng was slapped in the face because he originally said that Yi Feng was just bluffing. That was a bluff, that was completely real, and the strength was even stronger than he imagined. After issuing the trial and arrest warrant, after talking about greed, anger and ignorance, he killed the three of them in seconds. Not even a chance to fight back. This guard was so shocked that he still hasn't recovered yet. But now after hearing Pu Chuan's words, the guard came back to his senses. Feeling the inquiry and confusion in Pu Chuan's words, the guard couldn't help but feel a little confused. It's great that Trump didn't fire him immediately. But if he says something wrong and embarrasses Pu Chuan, I'm afraid it will be very miserable. But it's impossible not to say it, and he also feels. No, I think it's fake. Maybe Yi Feng just said it casually, he must be scared. Next, I estimate that he will be unable to summon his vehicle due to lack of energy and escape from the secret realm. After all, the secret realm has changed so much that it's impossible not to escape. And even if there is. Then the guard slowly spoke. A serious look on his face. Definitely. At the same time. And even if you have a car, I also think it must be scrap metal. Not worth mentioning, so ugly. At this time, the Pope also came back to his senses. Feeling the confusion of his priest. Sneered, he said with a serious face. Eyes full of confidence. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Puxuan listened to the guard saying words similar to those of the Pope. I suddenly felt happy, and the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Just wave your hand. Suddenly there was a shouting match. And due to the previous multi-channel promotion of Zhe Lao, there are multiple live video connections. This scolding battle is more intense than everyone thinks. Seeing Chen Wei and others raise their eyebrows. But they didn't stop them. The best way to stop them was to let them come in despair and go back in despair. Humiliating yourself. They have this confidence in Yi Feng. At this time, they were even more curious about what Yi Feng's vehicle was and whether their armored regiment could also be summoned. After all, the summoner in Yi Feng's hand is actually the Xingtian summoner. The actual situation was exactly what Chen Wei and others thought, and they saw the next scene. This immediately brought the somewhat confusing discussion forum to a halt. It also made Puxuan, who was full of pride and was in high spirits, look stiff. His face is very ugly. His face was covered in dust. The Pope's face changed even more, and he was shocked and unbelievable. I saw. Car. In the secret realm of heaven, Zhao slowly came back to his senses. Looking at Yi Feng in front of him, he said with a look of astonishment. Wang Shui on the side heard this and looked towards Yi Feng subconsciously. A look of curiosity on his face. Right, it's just a car. After all, the Xingtian armor, as one of the three major law enforcement armors, maintains the peace of the universe. Those who come and go naturally have their own vehicles. In other words, every armor has it, and so does the general's, but compared to Xingtian's armor, Xingtian, who is a general's armor, is naturally more advanced. Like this, Xingtian armor fusion. Yi Feng heard it and realized it. He spoke slowly. Then there was a soft drink. Yi Feng instantly turned into Xingtian armor. Zhao Qing couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Although it was not the first time to look at Yi Feng's transformation into Xingtian armor. In other words, it was not the first time they met. At this time, Zhao Qing looked at the Xingtian armor in front of him. Inexplicably, I feel like something is different. It seems to be getting stronger. This made Zhao Qing a little stunned. However, Zhao Qing didn't wait to think about anything. Yi Feng's next words directly brought Zhao Qing back to his senses. Burning horse. I saw that Yi Feng didn't care what Zhao Qing thought. After summoning the Xingtian armor, he clenched his fists tightly and then crossed directions. The armor can bloom, and Yi Feng becomes more powerful, emitting red light. Then in the astonished and shocked eyes of everyone, swirling space fluctuations came. Seeing this scene, the Pope couldn't help but feel happy. Look, I'm just saying, even if the other party has it, that's... What? This is impossible. Pointing at this scene, he said with excitement. It often drives high and goes low, but this car is so popular on the market. What happens next will definitely be different. However, apparently the Pope guessed wrong. Xingtian armor vehicle, the highest technological crystallization in the universe, fire horse of punishment. I saw the sound of Yi Feng falling down. Then a small space shuttle boat with a red main color and a cool shape appeared in front of everyone. Slowly fell beside Yi Feng. Looking at this scene, Yanran couldn't help but be surprised. Puxuan, who was chatting endlessly, opened his mouth. How is this possible? The pupils shrank sharply. He stood up directly from his seat, pressed his hands on the table, and pressed his face against the screen. His eyes widened. He said with a look of disbelief. The same goes for the guards on the side. His mouth was wide open. It turns out that it really does exist. Yi Feng really has a car. It's not false. And it's also very gorgeous and cool. It's not some nonsense. Twice in a row, he guessed wrong. Doesn't this mean that steel armor is really not as powerful as armor? After all, according to Yi Feng, every piece of his armor has a vehicle. Bring your own car. No research and development required. This is something that even a steel armor cannot match. Illusion, it must be an illusion. Even if there is, the ability is not very good. Maybe it's worse than a fighter jet. Yes, that's it. At this time, Puxuan slowly came to his senses. He said with a look of disbelief. Finally, my mind calmed down a little. But it's just a little bit better. After all, the light armor comes with its own base. With this function, it is no longer comparable to the steel armor, even if the opponent is really inferior to the fighter. But the actual situation is, not only is it far superior to fighter planes, but it is also something they cannot create even if they combine all the resources of Blue Star. Yi Feng's next words made Puxuan lose his mind and stay in place. It also made everyone around the world stunned, face full of astonishment. I saw. Burning horse. At this time, when everyone had different expressions. At this time, Zhao Qing also slowly came back to his senses. Looking at the car in front of him, he said with surprise. It's really cool. Wang Shui, who was on the side, didn't think so much when she saw this scene. All thoughts are thrown directly to the back of the mind. He came directly in front of the burning horse, holding up his mobile phone to take pictures and live broadcast. His face was filled with wonder. He kept mumbling, "So cool." Yifeng couldn't help but shake his head. After all, in this situation, it's too late to not use the car. I saw Yifeng nodding his head and throwing it away. .00. He narrowed his eyes slightly and spoke slowly. What? Zhao Qing came to his senses instantly after hearing this. He said with a surprised look on his face. Then he looked over subconsciously. This sight directly shocked Zhao Qing. There was a rare look of panic in his eyes. I saw. Boom. A powerful aura appeared instantly, and the entire secret realm began to shake violently. And the most frightening thing is that because of this breath, the entire secret space is unstable at this time. It seems to be getting bigger invisibly. In short, although the distance is still the same, due to the vibration of space, it is not so easy to pass. It turns out that at a speed of 1000 meters per second, you can get Chinese medicine in one day. But now I don't even know how many years it will take, and I might not be able to get there until I die. Not to mention those spatial turbulence. This. At this time, Zhao Qing saw this scene. He said with a look of surprise and uncertainty. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. At this time, Wang Shui noticed the movement and subconsciously came to his senses. He stopped what he was doing and looked around. Feeling the changes around her, her beautiful eyebrows could not help but frown tightly. That's why I do this. That's why I summoned the horse of fire. Yifeng said lightly. Zhao Qing came to his senses instantly. Subconsciously he looked towards Yifeng. You already knew. But, he said with a surprised look on his face. No, I just noticed it too. By the way, I seem to have forgotten to tell you that your worries are unnecessary. I said that in order to maintain the peace of the universe, the three major law enforcement armors have their own vehicles, so they are all very fast. You can call it a small space shuttle. Faster than the speed of light. The speed can reach 100 times the speed of light. So it can not only be used for combat, but also has the ability to travel through time and space. Getting there is a piece of cake. Yifeng heard this and shook his head. Then he noticed the confusion in Zhao Qing's tone. Then he spoke, and listened to Yifeng's words. Zhao Qing, Wang Shui, and everyone who was paying attention to this scene were stunned. The Pope, who was still convinced that he was incompetent, and others just stood there in a daze. Face full of shock, can travel through time. And most importantly, it exceeds the speed of light. Up to 100 times the speed of light. Exclamation mark. Listening to Yifeng's words, everyone felt that their heads were on standby. Buzzing. This is really unbelievable to everyone who has not even flown out of the solar system. He was stunned in place. Global silence. At the same time, at the center of the secret realm. The nether demon Kulesk seemed to have noticed something. He glanced back subconsciously. Then he grinned and didn't care. Because it's about to begin. Thinking of this, Kulesk and Shadowball looked at each other. Then they all raised their hands. Then a dazzling beam of light shot straight into the sky. It's time for the nether demon and the supernatural beast to arrive. Then what? Did I hear it wrong? Super, beyond the speed of light. And it's 100 times faster. 100 times the speed of light. And you can also travel through time and space, but it's 100 times the speed of light. It's normal to be able to travel through time and space. After all, if you reach the speed of light, you have the opportunity to travel through time and space, let alone 100 times J. It's just a piece of law enforcement armor, but it has such strength and equipment. What kind of existence is the Ming realm? At this time, listening to Yifeng's understatement, everyone slowly came back to their senses. Subconsciously wiped his ears. He took a sharp breath of air and opened his mouth subconsciously. He said with a look of surprise and uncertainty. I wonder if I heard or saw wrong. 100 times the speed of light. Space shuttle. This thing is so powerful. We can't even fly out of the solar system. Now you are telling me that this thing has 100 times the speed of light. This really shocked everyone, and it was hard to recover for a long time. Extremely shocked. Directly superior to all Blue Star technologies, Blue Star is third. It seems that the highest technological crystallization in the universe really deserves its reputation. And it's true that it's not just about good-looking appearance, but also real strength. Very awesome. At the same time, what attracts the most attention is that the Xingtian armor is just law enforcement armor. He is not a member of the Mingji Pharaoh's court, but this kind of law enforcement armor has such a powerful experience. As well as a car that can be said to be incredible, it has simply refreshed everyone's understanding of the middle and lower classes. Then how powerful are the higher-ups in the Ming realm? How scary is that? Makes everyone curious. Or, is this the Ming realm? At this time, Chen Wei looked at this scene. 27, also slowly came back to his senses. He took a breath and spoke slowly. A look of emotion on his face. His expression was horrified, although she had already guessed that the car Yifeng mentioned was not simple. But I really didn't expect it to be so difficult. It simply refreshed Chen Wei's understanding of cars. Looking at Yifeng with a calm face, Chen Wei couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. It's a shame that he can still remain so calm. If it were anyone else, even she would be so happy. I really don't know what he thinks. Does he really have a car that's more awesome than the Horse of Fire? Shaking her head, Chen Wei slowly came back to her senses. Looking at Yifeng, he whispered softly. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. No way. Probably not. This car is so awesome, and besides, wouldn't it be outrageous? But compared to this, Yifeng said that every law enforcement armor has one, could it be? Then Chen Wei seemed to think of something, and her eyes lit up. He said with a surprised look on his face. The confusion in my heart dissipated instantly, and I was immediately attracted by this idea. Surprised and uncertain, looking very excited. Not only Chen Wei, but also in this Jojo Imperial Palace. The same is true for Mr. Zhe. Could it be that the armor legion we formed also has such power? Do you also have such equipment? At this time, Mr. Zhe looked at this scene and stood up from his seat. He pressed his hands tightly on the table and looked at the scene in front of him with excitement. He thought with excitement on his face. Although Mr. Zhe had made such a guess before, now Xiping's guess has been confirmed. And it was even more exaggerated and terrifying than he imagined. At this time, Mr. Zhe still couldn't control his inner excitement. His fists were clenched tightly. Extremely excited. If it is true, then there will be a scene where the armored legions will summon the burning horses and vehicles. It's exciting just thinking about it. Shocking. I'm afraid that the whole world will pay attention to it by then. Invincible. Not just Mr. Zhe, the four old men on the side also thought of something. Extremely excited. The bearded old man and several other old men could be seen looking depressed. As for being so excited. But, I never thought that this young man named Yifeng would have such strength. It is indeed something worth being happy about. I am so lucky in Kyushu. Then the bearded old man looked at Yifeng's figure on the screen and murmured with admiration. No matter what happens then, Yifeng cannot be handed over. Compared to the excited mood of everyone in Kyushu. At this time, those who are pro-foreign, as well as Yingzhong and others who are very cold towards Yifeng and are even ready to watch the show. When I saw this scene, I almost had a cerebral hemorrhage and fainted to the ground. Especially the Pope. He, who had originally vowed, was speaking with assurance on his face, listening to Yifeng's words. He was just stunned in place. His mouth opened subconsciously and he was stunned. At this time, the priests below looked at the Pope with strange faces. The Pope was so confident before, but now the Pope is so embarrassed. How angry. The Pope only felt that his prestige had been dealt a huge blow. Not only the Pope, but also the Eastern European royal court, Japanese high-level officials and high-ranking officials of Ying dynasty. Especially Trump was so angry that he flew into a rage. Thinking back to the time when I just ran to the JoJo Live broadcast room and started talking nonsense. His face was even redder. No wonder he was wondering how JoJo let him in so easily. It turns out that I was just waiting for this stupid guy to jump in. When I think of my mortal enemy, the elders in the pavilion look at me with smiles on their faces. Seeing his own joke, Pushwan was extremely angry. Especially when I think about the day when Kyushu will suddenly expose me. After exposing his stupid behavior this time, Pushwan suddenly trembled. This was a huge blow to his prestige. Then he won't be able to see anyone anymore. Thinking of this, Pushwan became inexplicably afraid. Lian couldn't help but look at the guard on the side with anger on his face. At this time, the guard who had originally sworn to see this scene, also confused. His face was blank. He didn't expect that things would turn out like this. Yifeng actually summoned a car, and it was even scarier than he imagined. This technology can't help but be awesome, and it's far superior. Far surpassing all the technologies of Blue Star. The face was slapped, but feeling Pushwan's gaze, the guard came back to his senses instantly. I couldn't help but grit my teeth and could only walk all the way to darkness. I think he just said it casually. If it were me, I would still say yes. The guard hurriedly spoke, a serious look on his face. Speak quickly. He was afraid that if he was too slow, Trump would drag him to a military court. Not only the guards, but also the Pope felt the expressions of the priests below. I just feel that my authority has been greatly challenged. You must know that in the eyes of everyone, in the eyes of these people, the Pope is omniscient and omnipotent. Know everything. It is the word of God. Can't go wrong. But what the Pope said now is completely inconsistent with reality. This impact on prestige is not as simple as imagined, and may even turn into a huge crisis of faith. Then, while the guard continued to quibble, he was not afraid of being scalded by boiling water. Meanwhile, the Pope, I would also say 1,000 times, 10,000 times. You can't believe what you say without proof. The Pope said bravely, a serious look on his face. Of course he thought so too. Anyway, the Pope doesn't believe it. Think, what is the concept of 100 times the speed of light? Their legendary angels and archangels are not so awesome. The speed is comparable to the speed of light, or even beyond it, but definitely not much, not that outrageous anyway. Maybe not as fast as the speed of light. You tell me now, 100 times the speed of light per day. Doesn't it mean to directly crush the angels in their faith? Their angels are not even as good as the law enforcement armor of the East. The Pope doesn't believe it anyway. Or maybe they say they don't want to thank you, but deep down they don't want to admit it. After listening to the Pope's words, the priests nodded subconsciously. And the most important thing is that I can feel that the secret realm of Jojo Tien is very unstable at this time. There is a very sinister aura. It is more evil and powerful than the evil dragon of the ocean and the card repairing organization of Japan. Without the power to exceed the speed of light, it is absolutely impossible to achieve. So be careful, this Kyushu native named Yifeng is definitely not, this is impossible. Then the Pope seemed to be thinking about something and looked at the scene on the screen. Look at this secret realm of heaven. He smiled coldly. He spoke slowly. His eyes were full of coldness, ready to expose Yifeng directly. A look of confidence on his face. After listening to the Pope's words, all the priests also came back to their senses. Subconsciously he turned his head and looked over. However, before the Pope could finish speaking, the next scene happened. It made the Pope's eyes bulge. A look of shock on his face. Dumbfounded, not only the Pope, but Pushwan, who had already recovered and stabilized his mind, saw this. His mood changed so quickly that he almost fainted due to cerebral hemorrhage. A look of horror on his face. This is impossible. I saw 100 times the speed of light. Listen to Yifeng's words. Zhao Qing couldn't help being surprised and looked at Yifeng in surprise. Although she had come to her senses at this time, she had experienced many big and small things with Yifeng. But at this time, she was still shocked. Almost lost consciousness. Wang Shui on the side also came to his senses and listened to Zhao Qing's words. He also looked at Yifeng with curiosity on his face. Yes, but obviously it can only carry one person. Do you want to go? Yifeng heard this and nodded. He smiled softly, then looked at Zhao Qing and Wang Shui and said, "It's very dangerous there." Then Yifeng thought of something and spoke immediately. A serious look on his face. Zhao Qing and Wang Shui couldn't help but be stunned. Then they looked at each other. Nodded. That's natural. And I remember that in horror movies, the one who stays last is the one who dies. Although this is not a horror sequence, it is safer to follow you than to stay here. Yes, and I also want to increase my knowledge. Why are we yours too? If we make a fuss in the future, it will be your face, right? Then Zhao Qing and Wang Shui slowly came to their senses. Yifeng looked at him seriously and said, especially Wang Shui, said the last thing. Subconsciously take a step forward. A serious look on his face. Everyone nodded subconsciously, with envy on their faces. Sure enough, he is undoubtedly Mr. Yi's follower. If you don't admit it yet, you are being humble. Yi Feng couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This was especially true after hearing what Wang Shui said at the end. He looked a little strange. So you recognize that you are a follower? Yi Feng said softly. Wang Shui, who originally had a serious face but was a little emotional, listened to Yi Feng's words and break the defense directly. I didn't know what to say for a moment. Seeing this, Yi Feng smiled lightly. Didn't say much. Instead, he patted the summoner slightly. Of course, I actually think so too. Flying shadow armor Jueying horse. Diamond armor thunder horse. I saw Yi Feng smiling slightly. He spoke slowly. Then, in the shocked eyes of everyone, 2 shuttle boats instantly appeared on both sides of the burning horse. It's obviously like summoning an armored shadow. You can summon cars at the same time. And they are all controlled by Yi Feng. So bringing 2 more people is not a problem for Yi Feng. And this car doesn't just look good, it can only be used for driving. It also has combat functions. Nothing is safer than staying inside. If anyone underestimates him, he will definitely be shocked and suffer a big loss. Thinking of this, Yi Feng smiled lightly. When everyone saw this scene, they saw Yi Feng summoning 2 more shuttle boats. Chen Wei and others were even more excited when they saw this. It seems that the law enforcement armor is really what you need. Come up, then Yi Feng said softly. Then under the gaze of everyone, Yi Feng and the other 3 got directly into the law enforcement armor car. Then under the control of Yi Feng, fly directly towards the center of the secret realm. Instantly disappeared from everyone's eyes. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. His eyes were filled with wonder. When Puxuan and others saw this scene, especially the Pope, they were completely petrified. His fists were clenched tightly, and his eyes were full of fear. Mingji, Yi Feng, it actually exceeded the speed of light as Yi Feng said. Reached 100 times the speed of light. Even in this situation, Yi Feng still reached the center of the secret realm in less than a second. Everyone was completely convinced and horrified. Without a speed, it is absolutely impossible. Puxuan's guards fainted when they saw this scene. This time he is dead. At the same time, tears flowed from my eyes, tears of regret. But what makes everyone unbelievable and even horrifying is, Yi Feng, by the way, does the general's armor also have a car? Is it also so powerful? At this time, it is at the center of the secret realm. The 3 shuttle boats slowly fell towards the ground, and at this time Zhao Qing seemed to have thought of something. Asked Yi Feng through the intercom. His face was full of curiosity. When everyone heard this, they subconsciously cheered up. There was some disapproval in my heart. There must be a car, but they will never believe it is so powerful. It really exceeds the speed of light, and traveling through time and space is a big deal. However, yes, I have. The armors in the Ming realm all have their own vehicles. Yi Feng heard this and nodded directly. But naturally it's not that powerful. It's not as good as the burning horse. Everyone heard this and nodded subconsciously. The expression on his face was that of course. You see, I was right. How can it be so? It's only a few dozen times the speed of light. After hearing this, everyone, even the Pope, fell asleep. Listening to Yi Feng's words, I was stunned. Completely numb. Co-author. You Mingji armor really don't take the speed of light seriously, right? The speed is calculated based on the speed of light. Could it be said that this is the bright world? Especially when they thought that the captain's armor was just the basic armor of the Ming realm, everyone suddenly became more and more numb. The Pope and others were even more murderous and fearful. What kind of existence is the Ming realm? Is it possible to be better than the master? Did I hear this correctly? The armored car of the armored general in the Ming realm is also calculated at the speed of light. It's only a few dozen times the speed of light. This, co-authored by Yi Feng, the speed of light is not speed. The speed of light is nothing, right? No, it's not so much that Yi Feng has a very high vision, it's more that Mingji is too perverted, because it's scary. It's a rhythm that doesn't take the speed of light seriously. So even Yi Feng doesn't care about the speed of light. That makes sense, it's really true. What kind of existence is the Ming realm? When will Mr. Yi introduce us and directly announce the origin of the Ming realm to the whole world? I want to say that maybe someone above already knows, but it's just because of some things that it hasn't been announced yet. For example, if you are waiting for an opportunity, announce it in one fell swoop to increase your persuasiveness. This. At this time, everyone in the live broadcast room slowly came to their senses. Listening to Yi Feng's words, a look of surprise appeared on his face. His expression was very startled. Listening to Yi Feng's understatement, looking at Yi Feng's indifferent expression. Everyone in the live broadcast room was immediately stunned, with faces full of astonishment. He said in horror. If they hadn't seen the power of the 3 law enforcement armor vehicles, everyone would have believed that Yi Feng couldn't just talk casually. I am very convinced of Yi Feng, otherwise I would doubt myself. Because this is so calm. Not like a person at all. If a normal person encounters this kind of thing and has a car like this, wouldn't he be so happy? Opening square bracket question mark question mark question mark question mark. I don't know whether I should say that Yi Feng has a lot of knowledge or that he has too high a vision. Overall, his quality is indeed higher than theirs. Anyway, they wouldn't be able to be so calm. Maybe this is the difference between them and Mr. Yi. After all, in the past 50 years, it is true that only Yi Feng has used armor powers to this extent. At the same time, I also realized that maybe Yi Feng is like this because of Ming Yuan. This made everyone more and more curious about Mingji. What is the origin of Mingji? I can't help but secretly discuss it, and it's a hot topic. While the people in Kyushu, who were relatively calm in comparison, were completely shocked abroad. Impossible. This is impossible. It's just an Oriental law enforcement armor. How could there be such a car? It's just Oriental armor. How could it have such technology? Such near-God power? At this time, Pushwan looked at this scene. He slowly came back to his senses. He shook his head and said with a surprised look on his face. This power has surpassed their steel armor. Although they really don't want to admit it, this is indeed something that their steel armor cannot allow. When the Yingzhong were still trying to increase the speed of the steel armor to the speed of sound. And Yi Feng's armor has been calculated based on the speed of light. Just start traveling through time and space casually. It's really not covered. This made Pu Chuan feel envious and jealous, and the fire of greed arose in his heart. These must be from their hawk sauce. If they can obtain these technologies, their eagle strength will definitely be greatly improved. Returning to number 1 is not a dream, it is just around the corner. Thinking of this, Pushwan narrowed his eyes slightly. The inner desire to send troops to Kyushu to hand over Yi Feng has not weakened. At this time it becomes even more intense. Pushwan would not think that Yinzhou would have one of these armors. And Yi Feng is indeed powerful, but he hasn't fully grown up yet. It can be completely suppressed. They still have Yingzhong who is at the peak of SSS level. As long as Kyushu doesn't stop them, they are willing to hand it over. That's really not a problem. And when he thought of this, Pu's determination became stronger. Yi Feng must not be allowed to grow up. It's so scary before I even grow up. If you grow up. Thinking of this, Pushwan shuddered subconsciously. Quick, you also urge them to wait for the matter in this secret realm to be over. Let all the steel armor troops set off. Thinking of this, Pushwan didn't care that the guard beside him had fainted and shed tears. Instead, he turned to the guard standing beside him and said. A serious look on his face. The guard came to his senses instantly after hearing this. He glanced at the right guard who fell on the ground with pity. Don't think that everything will be fine if he faints. After the matter is over, I am destined to go to the military court. The result is already determined. But all this has nothing to do with him and has nothing to do with him. Thinking of this, Zuo Wei shook his head and came back to his senses. Yes, clear, he nodded directly to Pushwan and said. Then he walked out directly. He happened to bump into the staff and secretary who were returning to report. Looking at the hurried left guard, he couldn't help but frown. Did something happen again? They couldn't help but look at each other, and then nodded. He followed quickly. Did something happen when we left? I saw the staff quickly followed the left guard, their expressions slightly condensed. He spoke slowly, a serious look on his face. Is it about Yi Feng? Did he use some new type of armor again? At this time, the secretary on the side heard. Then he spoke. In his opinion, it seems that this is the only reason that makes Mr. so nervous and even issues similar orders one after another. And it gets stricter each time. It started as a simple survey. The second time, all efforts were concentrated on the investigation, and at the same time, the elite steel armor troops were urged to dispatch. But this time, all active steel armor troops, including ordinary steel armor, were directly dispatched. Each time it gets tougher. Is it possible that Trump plans to send some strong men there next time? And this is just for Yifeng, for fear that the pressure is not enough. Jojo disagrees. Thinking of this, the secretary shuddered subconsciously. This was the first time he had seen such a thing, and even he found it a bit unbelievable. Although the staff on the side didn't say anything. But the look on the staff member's face at this time left no doubt that he and his secretary had similar thoughts. However, what made them dumbfounded was, no, that's not the case. On the contrary, I think this is more terrifying than Yifeng mastering the new armor. This is what happened. The left guard heard this and felt the confused looks from his staff and secretary. He shook his head and spoke slowly, a serious look on his face. The secretary and staff immediately cheered up and started listening. However, upon hearing this, their expressions immediately changed. A look of astonishment on his face. Eyes full of shock. Extremely horrified. Burning horse. Beyond the speed of light. Can reach 100 times the speed of light. How can this be? Doesn't this directly surpass their steel armor and become Blue Star's most promising technology? It directly shook the foundation of their hawk sauce. Thinking of this, the staff and secretary came to their senses instantly. Realizing the seriousness of the matter, they couldn't help but look at each other. His expression was very serious. He nodded, and then directly followed the left guard to the Pentagon again. Conveyed Trump's order. The senior executives who were still discussing tactics and even whether this was too impulsive were instantly silenced. Knowing the seriousness of the matter, we immediately started dispatching. It's not just eagle sauce. At the same time, the same was true for the Japanese cabinet, the Eastern European Royal Court, and the Western European Holy See. They sent out their troops one after another and stood ready. It seems that he is waiting for an opportunity. Suddenly, the situation in the entire world began to become turbulent. Mingji, Yifeng. At this time, the Pope holds the scepter. Holding the scepter tightly with both hands. Staring closely at Yifeng's figure. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said coldly. His eyes were full of solemnity. The priest below was trembling, even though the Pope was wrong again. But they didn't dare to say anything because the person who raised the confusion was dead. Looking at Haydn aside, all the priests were shivering and shaking. At this time, the Pope did not think so much. At this time, all his attention was focused on Yifeng. A look of coldness on his face. At this time, the actions of various countries were naturally spread to all the cabinet members in Kyushu. Suddenly, many people became worried and frowned tightly. Sure enough, it's still coming. The old man Jay didn't think so much, but sneered. He didn't take it to heart, but his mind was on the secret realm of heaven. However, this sight directly shocked Mr. Jay, and made Chen Wei, who was outside the mystery of heaven, stand up subconsciously. How could this happen? Why is he here? He said with a look of astonishment. It's just Chen Wei, and no one else knows anything about things outside Kyushu at this time. Everyone who had been paying attention to the secret realm of heaven saw this scene at this time. The discussion stopped for an instant and became quiet in an instant. His mouth opened subconsciously, a look of astonishment on his face. Incredible. Him, that person. I saw. Just when everyone had different expressions and talked a lot. After Yifeng finished answering Zhao Qing's words. At this time Yifeng walked directly off the burning horse. Looking at the scene in front of me, looking at the very familiar light beam. Smile softly. At this time, Zhao Qing and Wang Shui also stepped down from Juiyingju in thunderstorm. I also saw this scene. The pupils shrank sharply. They were all attracted by Yifeng's words before, and the secret realm was already shocked. Therefore, when the light pillar appeared, neither Wang Shui nor Zhao noticed it. Coupled with the speed that exceeds the speed of light, it takes almost no second. So until now, everyone suddenly discovered that at some point a light pillar appeared in the center of the secret realm, soaring straight to the sky. Looking at this scene, everyone couldn't help but. Jin was stunned for a moment. Especially those who knew about the deep sea incident suddenly became a little confused, like Zhao Qing and Wang Shui. This is Netherworld Demon. At this time, the old man from Imperial Pavilion saw this scene. His eyes couldn't help but squint slightly. He said with a serious face. At the same time, I was filled with confusion. Don't know how they got in. Was it always in there? But how is this possible? That is, supernatural beast. Sure enough, not all of them have been wiped out yet. Then Mr. J seemed to have discovered something. He couldn't help but squint his eyes slightly, looking at the digital beast standing under the beam of light. He murmured with a surprised look on his face. However, before he could come to his senses, what happened next was when he looked at those familiar figures. Mr. J couldn't help but feel a little lost. Not just him, but others too. I didn't expect them to be in there too. How did they get in? At this time, Zhao Qing also came to his senses. Looking at this light pillar, feeling this familiar atmosphere, Zhao Qing said solemnly, close to Yifeng, Wang Shui is also the same. His expression was very solemn. Wrong. Those are super beast. Then Zhao Qing seemed to find something again, looking at the figures standing in the light pillars. He said with a surprised look on his face. The pupils shrank sharply. A look of astonishment. Unexpectedly, these supernatural beasts are still alive. You must know how much effort Kyushu spent at that time to suppress these supernatural beasts. The supernatural beast that had not moved for nearly 10 years appeared again. And there are quite a few. 1, 2, 3, 9 heads, a whole 9 heads. How on earth did these people get in? And how could he hook up with the Nether Demon? Could it be that they were originally in the same group? At this moment, Zhao Qing thought a lot. Not only Zhao Qing, but also Wang Shui and everyone who saw this scene had this idea. At the same time, he was confused, thinking secretly. I think it's because of possession. After all, the Nether Demon can possess human bodies at will. Presumably the Nether Demon should possess those people again. That's why you sneaked in. Yifeng, who was standing aside, slowly spoke. There was also a little surprise in his eyes. I really didn't expect that the Nether Demon would hook up with the supernatural beast. But it doesn't matter. Anyway, now he can be upgraded to the God of War Xingtian. Just use them to practice your skills. Thinking of this, Yifeng sneered. TB, possessed. Zhao Qing couldn't help being stunned when he heard this. He said with a look of astonishment. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but be shocked. There was a look of astonishment on his face. I really didn't expect the Nether Demon to have this ability. It seems to be more tricky and cunning than they thought. But in this case, are they people from those families who are possessed by the Han family? Recalling the scene before entering the secret realm, apart from the polar bear people, the only people left were the 4 major families. As for the others, sorry. All were destroyed by Yifeng. Moreover, the Nether Demon only appears in Kyushu, so it is most likely that he is a member of those 4 major families. Where are those people? Looking around, I couldn't see the 4 major families, not even the corpses. Zhao Qing said with a confused look. His face was full of confusion. Of course it's because of the Shadow Stone. These people are not ordinary supernatural beasts. They are all made from humans. Before everyone could think about it, Yifeng spoke immediately. A serious look on his face. Although the voice is small, it is enough for everyone to hear clearly. Everyone was shocked immediately. His face changed. Exclamation mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Human beings changed. These supernatural beasts are all transformed from humans. Could it be? Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but be shocked, and the people from the 4 major families were even more frightened. Yes, it's the Shadow Stone. They are all transformed from Shadow Stone. I didn't expect you to know this. Yifeng, Master Yi, you are really driving me crazy with jealousy. You know all this stuff. And just when everyone was in shock, a voice came. Then a figure slowly walked out. Seeing the person coming, everyone in Yinzhou couldn't help but be surprised. Even Yifeng couldn't help but frown. It turned out to be him. The Shadow Stone, of course, can also be called the Demon Spirit Stone. This is the Shadow Emperor, or an object unique to the Shadow Realm. Opposite to the Light and Shadow Stone of the bright world of the Light and Shadow universe. One is to bring hope to people, full of justice and light. And the other brings despair, destruction and disaster. They can also be fused with the host, but one can use it to summon the light and shadow armor native to the bright world. The other one, it combines with other creatures to form monsters with weird looks and evil breath. And this monster is generally called a supernatural beast. The existence of two extremes. It's no wonder that the Shadow Emperor dreams of destroying the Ming realm. These are completely two extremes. They are naturally antagonistic, and it is impossible to negotiate peacefully or coexist peacefully. Maybe the light world and the shadow world are two opposite worlds formed by yin and yang. One yin and one yang. And these guys in front of me are clearly supernatural beasts. And the more advanced the fused creature is, the more powerful the supernatural beast will be. Especially for humans as advanced creatures, and humans are geniuses among geniuses, that is even more incredible. It's like adding more power to a tiger, and its strength has greatly increased. Just like now, following the man's words, he clenched his right fist tightly and held the shadow stone in his hand. The nine-headed supernatural beast behind him roared instantly. Exudes a powerful aura. The strength is generally in the mid-level 5 level. The strongest one even has mid-S level ultimate power. Infinitely close to the peak of S level. And Yifeng's captor armor, the strongest captor, Ruiku currently has no more than mid-term ultimate power. And the most important thing is that the original strength of these people is only at the early stage of level 5. The strength is not even as good as those 4. The worst ones are even only A level peak. But just for a while, the strength of these people has increased several times. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. His expression was shocked. A look of astonishment. Are humans so powerful after becoming supernatural beasts? Of course, the most incredible thing is Mr. Zhang. It turns out to be him. Why is he here, and you still stand with these people? At this time, Chen Wei looked at the visitor. Looking at Mr. Zhang with a cold face, he stood upright. His fists were clenched tightly. He said with a look of disbelief. Looking at the figure on the screen, Chen Wei's pupils couldn't help but shrink. Surprised and uncertain, especially when you see Mr. Zhang still standing with these people, even more so. I really didn't expect that Mr. Zhang, who had always been gentle, would actually stand with these people. Could it be that it seems he betrayed us. At this time, the Imperial Palace cabinet and the elder saw this scene. He also slowly came back to his senses. Sighed softly. He said with a somewhat complicated expression. His eyes were full of surprise. He really didn't expect that Mr. Zhang would choose to stand with the supernatural beast. Make enemies of them, not just Chen Wei and others. At this time, everyone in the live broadcast room saw this scene. He couldn't help but take a sharp breath of air. In an instant, he came back to his senses from the magic of the Shadow Stone. A look of astonishment on his face. There was endless discussion. This is actually him. How could he stand with these people? He has betrayed young Master Yi, betrayed us, and wants to become an enemy of young Master Yi. I think so, although I really don't want to believe it, but now it seems that this is the case. And thinking about it carefully, there seems to be something wrong with this old man. Do you still remember the deep sea incident? When Mr. Yi's Father Yi, wanted to help Yi Feng, he stopped him. At that time, he thought it was Mr. Zhang who knew about Yi Feng's strength. That's why I blocked it. Quote, but none of us guessed it at that time, and it was also the first time he knew about Yi Feng's special armor. How could he possibly guess it? Looking back now, it is very likely that the reason why Mr. Zhang stopped Yi's father at that time was because he wanted to use the hands of the Nether Demon to get rid of Yi Feng, including the following several times, like the Battle of the Han family. I just didn't expect Yi Feng to be so strong. Although it feels like an afterthought, but now that I think about it, I can only say that Zhang Leota had a heart of betrayal from the beginning. Or maybe they have betrayed us. But why would he do this? Isn't he a guest of the Imperial Guard team? He has fame, wealth and status, so why would he do this? Maybe it's because of emotion, or desire. At this time, everyone in the live broadcast room was watching this scene. There was a lot of discussion. The expression is very astonished. There was a look of disbelief on their faces. They really didn't expect that Mr. Zhang would betray them. Stand with the Nether Demon. It simply shattered their outlook. However, under the analysis of some people, it seems that it is not so unbelievable, but rather a bit natural. Especially the analysis of the reasons why Mr. Zhang abandoned the bright and turned to the dark side made everyone sigh. Looking at Mr. Zhang's figure, his expression was a little dazed. I do not know what to say. And even though I thought about it now, it's too late to find out now. In other words, it is not too late. After all, the consequences will not be so serious. At least I didn't look towards the worst outcome. Everything is still under Yifeng's control. I never thought it would be you. At this time, in the secret realm of heaven. At this time, Yifeng also slowly came back to his senses. Everyone's guesses came to Yifeng's mind. But he was still a little surprised when he looked at Mr. Zhang in front of him. He spoke slowly, staring straight at Mr. Zhang. Yeah, it's me, Yifeng. I didn't expect you to be so powerful. No matter it's the battle in the deep sea, the Han family, or even the peerless geniuses of the 4 powerful countries, they can't do anything to you. I really didn't expect you to come here. And he knows so much. When Mr. Zhang heard this, he smiled coldly. He slowly came back to his senses, looked at Yifeng and said coldly. At the end, he narrowed his eyes slightly. His eyes were full of coldness. After all, he only learned about the Shadow Stone when he came into contact with Shadow Ba. In the past, Kyushu only regarded those supernatural beasts as a fantasy world, and the best guess was that the Shadow Man had a way to summon supernatural beasts. I don't know the existence of the Shadow Stone, and I don't know the function of the Shadow Stone. I only learned about this after hearing Yifeng's explanation. And understand that the reason for the emergence of supernatural beasts is because of the Shadow Stone. I was immediately surprised. But that's it, Yifeng knows this thing. This really made Mr. Zhang afraid and angry at the same time. His eyes are full of unwillingness and jealousy. At this time, Yifeng listened to Mr. Zhang's words with a thoughtful look on his face. It seems that he has already guessed why Mr. Zhang chose to join the supernatural beasts. And just when Yifeng was thoughtful, Zhao Qing on the side was not that much. At this time, she suddenly came back to her senses after listening to Mr. Zhang's words. He clenched his fist subconsciously and slowly took a step forward. Why did you do that? Looking at Mr. Zhang, he said with a puzzled expression. After all, among them, the relationship between Zhao Qing and Mr. Zhang is the best. Now seeing that Mr. Zhang is actually a spy of the supernatural beast, this is really hard for Zhao Qing to accept. Looks full of confusion. Why? Of course it's because of strength. Who is a guest? What I pursue is supreme strength. Why do you think I went to be a guest? It was just to see if there were any treasures from heaven and earth that could improve my strength. However, obviously. Zhang Lao heard this and sneered. He spoke slowly. His eyes were full of madness. And after listening to Zhao Qing's words, everyone came back to their senses instantly. I want to know why Mr. Zhang did this. But listening to Mr. Zhang's words, everyone couldn't help but become a little silent. Although it sounds ridiculous, but I seem to understand. After all, in this world, strength determines status, and strength determines treatment. Just like the world in Yifeng's previous life, and the value of money. Even higher. It's normal for Mr. Zhang to think this way. Many people in the live broadcast room are even pursuing strength. But what no one expected was that a person who was always known for his charity would have such darkness in his heart. With such ambition, it really surprised everyone. Not only them, but even Chen Wei and others did not notice this. Amazed, and Chen Wei was even a little annoyed at this time. After all, Mr. Zhang's ability to enter the secret realm is half of hers. Even without Chen Wei, Shadow Ba can still bring him in. But Chen Wei didn't know that she felt a little guilty at this time. At this time, Yifeng didn't know Chen Wei's expression or what everyone was thinking. At this time, he listened to Mr. Zhang's words. And obviously you failed. You didn't succeed. So you joined them. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Mr. Zhang. He spoke slowly. That's right. As long as I have this shadow stone, I can become stronger. Mr. Zhang heard this and nodded. He opened his hands, raised his head and said loudly. A look of madness. Looking at this scene, Everyone looked stunned. Is this the reason why Mr. Zhang betrayed? But strength. Everyone looked at the family members who had turned into supernatural beasts, obviously losing their consciousness. Looking at this scene, I looked at the dark stone in Mr. Zhang's hand. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Exclamation mark, question 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 mark. The strength has improved, but the consciousness seems to be no longer one's own. Ah, the reason why these people are like this is because their consciousness has dissipated and they have been possessed by the great nether demon. How can they still survive? And I don't know how to use the Shadow Stone as a living person. I am still myself. Lord Shadow Ba, you won't lie to me. At this time, it seemed that he had guessed what everyone was thinking. Mr. Zhang lowered his head slightly and looked directly at Yifeng. Then he spoke, a serious look on his face. That's right. That's just the way it is. You're here after all, Armor Yifeng. This is our first meeting. How about my meeting gift? It's not bad, right? At this time, Zhao Qing did not wait to say anything. A voice sounded immediately. Everyone looked over subconsciously. A man in black robe slowly walked out and appeared in front of everyone. Walking together was the nether demon Kulesk and followed by 4 nether demons. Yingba glanced at Zhao Qing and others, and then fixed his gaze on Yifeng. He spoke slowly, a smile on his face. Shadow Tyrant. Is he really here? I didn't expect that he would dare to appear in the imperial capital. Is it because of him? Is this the nether demon? It looks more difficult than the supernatural beast. At this time, Mr. Zhe looked at this scene. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said coldly. Then he frowned slightly. He looked at the nether demon Kulesk on the side and felt the powerful aura emanating from him. Said somewhat seriously, is it because these nether demons blocked Shadow Ba's aura that they were not discovered? Then when he thought that the netherworld demon could possess him, it made Elder Zhe even more afraid. And this scene is not just about the old man from Jojo Pavilion. The appearance of Shadow Tyrant at this time also attracted the attention of many people, especially the appearance of the nether demon Kulesk, which attracted the attention of the Pope, Pu and others. He has similar thoughts to the old man Zhe, and is full of deep fear of the nether demon. But when I thought that the nether demon was from Kyushu, I suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. It's impossible for them to come to them for no reason. Impossible. Not just these rulers, but the leader of the card repair organization with the largest sphere of influence at this time saw this scene. His expression could not help but sink. His fists were clenched tightly. Shadow Tyrant, superpower beast, he said coldly. There was fear in his eyes. After all, card repair organizations are all over the world, but only in Kyushu. Okay. At that time, they invaded Kyushu and wanted to establish power in Kyushu. He was kicked out by Shadow Ba. The reason is, this is the territory of their supernatural beasts, the base of the Shadow Realm. How can barbarians come here? This puts the great Shadow Emperor's face in such shame. So the two sides started fighting. And what scares the Shuka leader the most is the Shadow Emperor spoken of by Shadow Ba. In other words, the card repair leader is not afraid of the Shadow Tyrant, nor the Shadow Realm. MX. At that time, it was just some projection of the power of the Shadow Emperor, so he was directly sent to Kyushu to destroy all the card repairing troops. And those are the main forces of their card repair organization. It made him feel heartbroken. Even if he hasn't come back to his senses yet, Shadow Ba has become the biggest villain in Kyushu in one fell swoop, of course before the nether demon came. As a result, too much foundation has been consumed, and the current situation of increasing abilities is not good. In a sense, it was also thanks to the card repair organization that the power in Shadow Ba's hands was greatly weakened. Otherwise it would be another story now. And because of this, when the current card repair leader saw the appearance of Shadow Ba, he was immediately afraid. Shadowland, what kind of existence is the Shadow Emperor? He said with a look of surprise and uncertainty. At the same time, he cheered up and looked seriously. He had a hunch that this matter would allow him to obtain more information about the Shadow Realm. Sooner or later he will take revenge for the revenge he committed 10 years ago. Shadowlands West, this is the pain of his life. At the same time, in the secret realm of heaven, the nether demon Kulesk looked at Yifeng and couldn't help but grin. Then he spoke. Sure enough, you are still here, Yinfa armor Yi Feng. It's time to put an end to the grudge between us. At the same time, the wormhole above the secret realm grew larger and larger. The secret realm is shaking more and more. At this time, the nether demon Kulesk stared closely at Yi Feng. His fists were clenched subconsciously. A look of coldness on his face. Grinning. And as Kulesk's words fell, the wormhole in the sky above the secret realm suddenly became larger and larger. The entire secret realm was shaking and shaking more and more. More intense than before, and a powerful evil aura slowly appeared in Yi Feng's perception. Yi Feng subconsciously raised his head and looked over. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then he withdrew his gaze, as if he had directly ignored Yingji and the nether demon. His eyes were fixed directly on Mr. Zhang. Is that so? So that's it. Is this why you did this? Looking at Mr. Zhang, he slowly spoke. Seeing this scene, both Godlesk and Netherworld couldn't help but get angry. A look of anger. At this time, Yingba had no idea that he had attracted everyone's attention in an instant. And his most annoying person, the card repair organization. If the person Yingba hates the most is not Yi Feng, but fix the card, he was afraid of Yi Feng, even a little afraid. I am afraid of Mingji and Yi Feng's terrifying growth rate. That's why I can't wait to get rid of it quickly. As for Shuka, Shadow Ba was filled with disgust and anger from the bottom of his heart. Shuka is afraid of Shadow Tyrant and the Shadow Realm, and wants to get rid of him. And why not the Shadow Ba? After all, if it weren't for repairing cards, how could he, the Shadow Tyrant, be like this? We still need to make secret moves and lurk silently. I was still gasping for breath, trying to find a way to open the interface channel. Wait for the opportunity and open the channel. It became so miserable. It was not because of the card repair that he prematurely exposed his Shadow Tyrant's strength, which aroused the fear of the top management of Kyushu and made them aware of the crisis in advance. Concentrate your efforts to suppress them. Otherwise, why would his Shadow Tyrant suffer from this? Reduced to the point of cooperating with the Nether Demon. As the vanguard of the Shadow Realm, the Shadow Emperor is very tough on Shadow Tyrant and has given many killer tricks. It's a pity, most of them are used to fight with the high-level card repairers and the main force. What? Be subdued and negotiate for peace. Do you want their faces from the Shadow Realm? Once a war begins, compromise is impossible. They in the Shadow Realm are not willing to compromise even in the Light Realm, let alone just repairing the card. What? Can cooperate? By cooperating with an alien barbarian, is he in danger from the Shadow Realm? Even if he can succeed, he, the Shadow Ba, must believe that when the Shadow Emperor comes, the first person to be dealt with will not be anyone else, but him, the Shadow Ba. The Shadow Emperor's strength was completely destroyed by him. Based on Shadow Ba's understanding of the Shadow Emperor, it was absolutely possible to wait for more time, and it was impossible to bow to others. What's more, this organization is not even as good as the Ming realm. As for the Nether Demon, it's different from Shu Ka. At least Yingba thinks that the other party is very powerful. Just that sentence that they destroyed the Shadow Star was enough to make Shadow Tyrant afraid. This is true even if they destroy the empty Shadow Star. It is completely different from these card repairs and is not on the same level. It's just a little worse than their Shadow Realm. Anyway, he, Shadow Ba, can't be offended. Therefore, if Shadow Ba knew that the leader of the card repair organization was also paying attention to this place, he would probably give him a good ridicule. Show it, make a show of it. After all, their people are coming. But even so, looking at Yi Feng's movements at this time. Also very angry. A look of anger on his face. His fists were clenched tightly. The same goes for the Nether Demon Kulesk on the side. But then he seemed to think of something and sneered. Didn't say much. Instead, he crossed his arms and looked at the scene in front of him. He is a little unsure about Yi Feng's current strength. I wonder how powerful the Xingtian armor can be used by Yi Feng today. Just in time for this guy to try it. Thinking of this, Kulesk retracted his mind. He looked towards Yi Feng. He concentrated with a look of curiosity on his face. At this time, Mr. Zhang slowly came back to his senses after listening to Yi Feng's words. I know, but I only pursue strength. What does the rest have to do with me? Looking directly at Yi Feng, he spoke slowly. A look of coldness on his face. Mr. Zhang. Hearing this, Zhao Qing couldn't help but sigh. Not only Zhao Qing, but also Wang Shui and everyone in the live broadcast room could not help but frown. He has sold his soul to Shadow Ba. It's like being sold to the messenger of hell. Then I saw that Zhao Qing still wanted to say something. And before Zhao Qing could say anything, he was interrupted by Yi Feng with a wave of his hand. Oh, is that what it looks like? Then I know, I will put you on trial and ban you. Yi Feng waved his hand and placed his right hand lightly on the Xingtian summoner. Chuckled. Looking at Mr. Zhang in front of him, he slowly spoke. Listening to Yi Feng's tone, he sounded almost like a superior, a law enforcer. Shadow Ba and Kulesk couldn't help but frown. Xingtian, Yi Feng. Kulesk's eyes narrowed slightly. Looking at Yi Feng, he said coldly. The same goes for Shadow Ba on the side. Very angry. But, snort, the law enforcement armor of the Ming realm. Then let me see your strength. Ying Ba seemed to have thought of something and restrained his desire to take action. Looking at Yi Feng, he said coldly. At the same time, he waved his hand and signaled Mr. Zhang to take the 9-headed supernatural beast to deal with Yi Feng. I plan to see how strong Yi Feng is first. Exactly what I wanted. Looking at this scene, Zhang Laolao nodded. Chuckled. Then he waved his hand. Suddenly the 9-headed supernatural beast behind him rushed directly towards Yi Feng. However, what shocked everyone was that the 9-headed supernatural beast instantly split into 2 parts. 5 supernatural beasts attacked Zhao Qing, and 4 supernatural beasts Wang Shui attacked. Mr. Zhang himself was staring at Yi Feng eagerly, holding the shadow stone tightly with both hands. Prepare to find the right opportunity and kill directly towards Yi Feng. Apparently he planned to use Zhao Qing and Wang Shui to distract Yi Feng. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but frown. When the Pope, Puxuan and others saw this scene, they burst into laughter. His face was full of excitement. Ah ha 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 ha. Yes, yes, that's it, take this guy down for me. It seems that this guy is quite good. Have you noticed that these superpowers are all from Kyushu? But the geniuses outside Kyushu have not turned into supernatural beasts. Obviously this person is very good and worthy of order. At this time, the Pope was seen watching this scene. He threw his head back and laughed. His eyes were full of excitement, which directly reflected the thoughts of senior officials from other countries. Extremely excited, he praised Mr. Zhang repeatedly and had a good impression of Jojo Shadow Ba. All the priests below were nodding their heads. There was a look of surprise on their faces, and they were still confused as to why they were all from Kyushu, and no people from other countries had turned into supernatural beasts. So this is awe. It turns out that these people know how powerful they are. After all, those countries are on good terms with their holy see. That's why. Be afraid of them. Thinking of this and listening to the Pope's words, all the priests were very excited. However, before the Pope had finished speaking, and before the priest had waited long, the next scene happened. His expression froze immediately, and his face turned dark. The Pope's tone was even more direct, and his face was as gloomy as water. His eyes were full of anger. Addh. These guys. So that's how it is, distracting armor Yi Feng. Although it's a bit treacherous, I like it. After all, these supernatural beasts transformed from people from Kyushu are still very strong. At least they are much better than those transformed barbarians. At this time, Shadow Ba looked at this scene. He nodded slightly. He said with a smile on his face. He looked very satisfied. So this is why you destroyed all those people's corpses. Kulesk on the side couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he heard this. Looking at Shadow Ba, he slowly spoke. Naturally, after all, letting that adult see these barbarians would dirty that adult's eyes. Shadow Ba heard this and nodded. Said as a matter of course. Kulesk heard this and nodded rarely. A look of approval on his face. In the armor world, the reason why General Lufa came to Kyushu was the Great Song Dynasty, not other countries. Why isn't this the reason? I want to go, of course I want to go to the country with the most developed culture at that time. Otherwise, if we go to some countries that look like animals, will they still have such faces as the nether demons? Therefore, Kulesk rarely agreed with Shadow Ba's words. And listening to the conversation between these two people, looking at their natural expressions. The faces of Puchuan and others who were so excited immediately became stiff and gloomy. It turns out that I wasn't in awe of them and didn't turn into a supernatural beast. But people simply looked down on them. He didn't even have a chance to transform into a supernatural beast. Moreover, Yang was immediately turned into ashes, and there was no scum left. It doesn't even deserve the position of the body. Looking at this scene, Pu Chuan, the Pope and others clenched their fists tightly. Very angry. I really have you, and it hasn't changed after all this time. Shadow Tyrant. At this time, the leader of Shuka looked at this scene. He chuckled and said coldly. However, before he finished speaking, the leader of Shuka seemed to notice something. He looked over subconsciously. This sight directly caused the Shuka leader's pupils to shrink. The faces of Pushwan and others, who were extremely angry, froze. This is, I saw, but even he has to shed a layer of skin in this situation. Unless he doesn't care about them, then, what? This is impossible. At this time, Yingba didn't know how many people his words had offended. At this time, he came back to his senses and looked at the scene in front of him. He said coldly, his eyes full of smiles. However, before he finished speaking, he was shocked by the next scene. Boom! See only rays of light. Threads suddenly appeared from the Shadow Horse and the exploding Thunder Horse, and directly bombarded these supernatural beasts. Suddenly these supernatural beasts didn't even attack. It will turn directly into ashes. At the same time, a voice came, shocking everyone. Tisk, you don't think my car is just a pretty one, do you? As a car with law enforcement armor, it naturally has weapons. Yi Feng said calmly. Laser gun. It's powerful enough to destroy huge meteorites. I didn't expect you to be so powerful. Not only can you control the 3 armored vehicles, but you can also use weapons. At this time, Kulesk looked at this scene. The pupils shrank sharply. He said with a look of surprise and uncertainty. His expression was very surprised. Kulesk was surprised that Yifeng could summon an armored vehicle. Especially the 3rd officer. Now that weapons can even be used, Kulesk is frightened for the first time by the Blue Star man in front of him. It seems to bring back very bad memories. The mental energy of the Blue Star people in front of them cannot be matched even by the Aries people. And everyone couldn't help but be surprised when they heard Kulesk's words. He took a sharp breath of air. Can destroy huge meteorites. Is it so powerful? Before everyone could think about anything, a voice came. I didn't expect that there is such a thing as you in this world. And it turns out to be a pair of armor I've never seen before. Are you the armor guardian of this world? Only a majestic voice sounded. It directly attracted everyone's attention, and they subconsciously looked up. This sight made everyone feel a little dazed, and also made the leader Shuka stand up directly. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. Is this the Shadow Realm? The high-level forces in the Shadow Realm? Sure enough, the Shadow Tyrant is nothing. Thinking of this, the leader of Shuka clenched his fists tightly. Not just the leader of the repair card, but also the armored car, as well as the angry Pope and others, were frightened at this time. At this time, I came back to my senses, and I could feel the powerful evil aura even through the screen when I looked at the person coming. Everyone's expressions couldn't help but be shocked. He looked a little nervous. Especially when you feel the breath coming from the other side. Astonished, looking at the figure gradually revealed in the sky, feeling the powerful evil aura exuding, Remian was filled with confusion. Who are they? Does this kind of evil atmosphere still exist in this world? Kulesk, who was watching this scene, couldn't help but narrow his eyes slightly. Is this the Shadow Realm? Whispered softly. At this time, Yifeng naturally noticed this scene and raised his head slightly. Looking at this scene, his expression condensed slightly. King of Kai, Black Emperor. Whispered softly. Are you here after all? Super Beast. The King of the Realm, the Black Emperor has arrived. Everyone was in an uproar. Much attention. Then, what is that? What a strong aura, what a powerful force. And I didn't expect that not long after these ghost demons appeared, they would actually get together with the supernatural beasts, Shadow Ba and the others. And they seemed to have a good relationship. The most important thing is that they made such a big noise so quickly. It seems like they have succeeded. What does that armored guardian mean? Does this mean that Yifeng is the first successor of Kyushu armor, or is he a guardian with the ability of armor? I don't know that. I only know that these people are very strong. Are they Shadow Ba's bosses? It feels like they have at least the strength of the early SS level. Then it looks like this, Master Yi Feng, isn't it cool? I think so, and if you look carefully and look behind you, it's not just these two people. Look who is behind them. There are others. Oh my god, densely packed, are those all supernatural beasts? See, at this time, everyone in the live broadcast room has not recovered from the terrifying ability of Yi Feng's car. Not only Puxuan, but also the Pope and everyone in the live broadcast room thought Yi Feng's snow was really just snow. Used to ride fast. After all, the speed is as high as 100 times the speed of light, which is enough to shock everyone and make them unbelievable. I really can't imagine what other abilities there are. It turned out really well. Laser gun. Moreover, it is extremely powerful. The 9-headed supernatural beast in the mid-S level can be destroyed without any hesitation. Destroyed directly. It was bombarded to pieces and not a single scrap was left. It is powerful enough to destroy huge meteorites. It really surprised everyone and made them a little distracted. However, before they could come to their senses, they had not yet come to their senses from the car. As a result, this is happening to us again. Looking at the two proud figures standing in the sky. Feeling the powerful aura emanating from it, everyone couldn't help but take a deep breath of cold air. He looked a little lost. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. It was hotly debated. At the same time, he was curious and surprised about the armor summoning sentence. Is this who Yi Feng is in the eyes of these people? But compared to this, everyone at this time is more concerned about the actual experience of these people. Feeling the aura emanating from these two people, everyone couldn't help but worry about Yi Feng's situation. After all, Yi Feng's current combat power is only mid-S level. Even if Xingtian armor is stronger, it is still only at the peak of level 5. There is really a huge gap between these two people who have at least the initial strength of SS level. Thinking of this, people can't help but look worried. Especially when they saw Kaio and Black Emperor followed by dozens of densely packed troops of supernatural beasts. Even more so, his eyes were full of worry. Not just the people in the live broadcast room, but other people as well. And see more clearly, I only saw the imperial palace of the Kyushu imperial capital. This aura is not about how strong it is, but the extremely evil aura is really frightening. No, it should be the aura emanating from the other passage behind those people. Even just some aura can have such power. It's really hard to imagine what kind of existence is behind it. It's heart-wrenching, even I feel a little bit like this. At this time, the old man Jay saw this scene. His brows were furrowed tightly. He spoke slowly. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. At the end, he looked very serious. It's not that this person is very strong, but at the early stage of SS level, he is a strong person. Not something to be afraid of. But there was another space behind these people that really made him feel palpitating. There is a trembling feeling from the soul. This made Mr. J subconsciously think of Shadow Ba, who was not very strong himself. It's just half a step to S level. But just like that, he severely damaged Shuka and became the #1 villain in Kyushu. The reason is that Shadow Ba has all kinds of killer tricks in the early stage. Various killing moves and various power projections. Various backgrounds. In the fantasy world, he is a disciple of that kind of sect. Although his strength is not great, his magic weapon is terrifyingly powerful. There is also the projection of parent strength. This is the most awesome thing. It will make you doubt your life. Of course, this is a shadow tyrant in the early stage, but it will be miserable in the later stage. First, he had a fight with Shuka, and then was suppressed by Kyushu with all his strength. The current Shadow Ba has long lost any background. I can only linger and gasp, huddle in darkness, and grow in darkness. If it weren't for hiding well, I'm afraid it would have ended long ago. And if it hadn't been for the emergence of the Nether Demon, Shadow Ba wouldn't have known how long he would have been hiding. I'm afraid that the 5 Shadow Guardians and the Shadow Emperor at that time did not expect that the fully prepared Shadow Tyrant would be enough to push the equipment of several galaxies. It turned out like this in the end. Even when Mr. J thinks about it now, he feels a little lucky, otherwise the consequences would be really unimaginable. So those projections are these two people? No, it's not them. Those power projections are even more terrifying. It seems they can't come yet. Looking at the Realm King and the Black Emperor, Mr. J frowned tightly. He said with a serious face, surprised and uncertain. But at the end, he looked at the two people on the screen and shook his head. It's just SS level. It can't be those projections. The weakest projection among them is higher than them. But even so, it's not something Yifeng can handle. TB, now things are in trouble. Looking at the Kaio, the group of supernatural beasts standing behind the Black Emperor, Mr. J couldn't help but frown tightly. He said with a worried look, now the secret realm of heaven can only be exited, not entered. Therefore, it is impossible to go in for support. Thinking of this, all the senior executives of Kyushu frowned tightly. A look of worry on his face. Yifeng, Chen Wei watched this scene and couldn't help but clenched her fist subconsciously. He said with a worried look. Compared with the worries of everyone in Kyushu, the Pope, Pushwan and others looked very excited at this time. Even though I was heartbroken. But when I thought that this happened in Kyushu, and it was just Yifeng who faced them now. What's more, the enemy is only at the early stage of SS level. Even if it comes out, there is nothing to be afraid of. Thinking of this, I instantly felt relieved. His expression became very excited. Especially the Pope came to his senses instantly and swept away his previously gloomy expression. He couldn't help but clapped his hands, feeling disgusted and angry at these people. I feel good again, although everyone has different looks and emotions. But his eyes were fixed on the secret realm of heaven. At this time, in the center of the secret realm of heaven. King of Kai, Black Emperor. Is that what those two people are called? At this time, Zhao Qing and Wang Shui also came to their senses. Standing close to Yifeng, looking at the two people in the sky. Stand ready. At the same time, listening to Yifeng's murmur, Zhao Qing slowly spoke. A serious look on his face. You can be considered Shadow Ba's boss. The status is only below the 5 shadow protectors. Yifeng heard this and nodded. He spoke slowly. His expression was also a little serious, and he really didn't expect that someone from the Shadow Realm would come first. He thought it was someone from the Netherworld demon. Was it premeditated, or was there another plan? Thinking of this, Yifeng subconsciously looked at Kulesk, who was a little silent at the same time. At this time, Kulesk did not notice Yifeng's sight. At this time, he looked at the two people in the sky and compared them carefully. He found that although these two people were very strong, and with his eyes, he could naturally see through their true nature. It's not easy to know the strength of the two of them. Strength is not what it seems on the surface. Far beyond the early stage of SS level. But that's it. It's also far different from the captain and the third captain. I guess they are about the same as the vice captain and the others. Thinking of this, Kulesk smiled disdainfully. He said with a nonchalant look. I felt a lot more relaxed inside. Strategically despise the opponent, tactically pay attention to the enemy. Kulesk naturally knows this. Therefore, when the Black Emperor and the Realm King came, Kulesk began to secretly compare himself with the Nether Demons. When he learned that the strength of the newcomers was equal to that of Deputy Captain Kura and the others, he instantly felt relieved. Not impressed. It is impossible to say that Shadow Ba can be the first to let these people come so easily, and it is also Kulesk's intention. I want to see the reality of the Shadow Realm and the strength of these people. As for whether this will overturn the situation and prevent their Nether Demon people from coming. Kulesk looked at the happy and arrogant Shadow Ba beside him. He sneered. That is impossible. But there is nothing to fear from the strength of these people, but you still have to be careful. Then Kulesk seemed to think of something and raised his head slightly. Looking at the supernatural beasts behind the Black Emperor and the King of Kai. He said with some fear. At the same time, he couldn't help but look at the shadow on old Zhang's hand. Subconsciously recalling the previous events. When Yifeng arrested and sealed the 3 Peters. At this time, Kulesk also killed other family members who came over. Of course, unlucky geniuses from other countries were also killed by Kulesk. Except for the polar bear, Calendar was lucky, because the teleportation center was far away from the secret realm, and he was still on the road even now. Didn't come over, but skipped a place. The rest were all killed by Kulesk. After doing this, Kulesk naturally no longer possesses that human being. After all, no one is interested in living on a creature that they despise. Not just Kulesk, but also the remaining 4 nether demons at this time. Straight out of a possessed human. In an instant, there were several more corpses on the ground, and they fell down. Snort. After finishing this scene, Kulesk smiled coldly. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly. With a slight clench of her left fist, she immediately wanted to destroy all the corpses present. Destroy it. However, at this moment, Shadow Ba stopped them. And under Kulesk's astonished gaze, he took out the Shadow Stone. Then, under the astonished gazes of Kulesk and other nether demons, the Shadow Stone in Shadow Ba's mouth was directly combined with these corpses. The so-called supernatural beast is formed. And Kulesk is most afraid of. It's this Shadow Stone. He estimated that Shadow Ba might want to throw the Shadow Stone at him. After all, their physical fitness is higher than that of humans, so it is impossible for these people not to be moved. And in fact, this is really the case. Now while Shadow Ba is excited, he is also mentally calculating how to squeeze the value of these nether demons. Better gain the appreciation of the Shadow Emperor. Now that reinforcements have arrived, Shadow Ba says he is not panicking and is invincible. You have to tell the captain about this after they arrive. At this time, Kulesk didn't know what Shadow Ba was thinking. Even if he knew it, he wouldn't care, but his thoughts would return. He whispered softly, planning secretly. What Kulesk didn't know was that not only was he afraid of Shadow Ba, but Shadow Ba was also afraid of their nether demons. I am a little afraid of the ability of ghost demons to possess me, and I am afraid that I will be secretly possessed by them. Therefore, they kept a distance from Kulesk. Now that reinforcements have arrived, they don't care about this and feel somewhat confident. Although Kulesk didn't know Shadow Ba's thoughts, Shadow Ba's changes at this time. Kulesk also saw it. Ah, stupid guy. He couldn't help but sneered and said with disdain. Then he shook his head and didn't care. After coming back to his senses, Kulesk suddenly realized that Yifeng was looking at him. He couldn't help but grin. Just as he was about to say something, Kulesk suddenly noticed that Yifeng didn't seem to be panicking. Although Yifeng was protected by armor at this time, his face could not be seen clearly. But Kulesk could still feel Yifeng's indifferent expression, which made Kulesk confused. You can still remain calm in the face of this situation. Either you are a fool, or you are arrogant. And Yifeng, who has such powerful willpower, obviously cannot be the former, so it can only be. Has he already been able to unleash the full power of the Xingtian armor? How can this be? Then Kulesk thought of something and looked at Yifeng. He said with a look of disbelief. Yifeng seemed to have noticed Kulesk's expression and smiled back. Then he looked toward the sky. At this time, everyone came to their senses. Listening to Yifeng's words, he couldn't help but be stunned. The 5 Shadow Protectors. Sure enough, these people are not the full strength of the Shadow Realm. I just don't know if it counts as a high-level person. But this man is a good young man, but it's a pity that he is dead. At this time, the leader of Shuka listened to Yifeng's words. He nodded slightly and said that as expected. The Black Emperor and the Kaio. Then he seemed to think of something, looked at Yifeng, and sneered. The sentence looks a little regretful, but the expression is very excited. After all, no one wants to have another enemy with terrifying potential. However, the next scene made leader Shuka and everyone stunned. A look of astonishment. I didn't expect you actually knew me. But that's right, as the armor summoner in this world, it's normal for you to know about us. But it's a pity that the armor summoner who has not yet grown up is not qualified to talk to us. The King of Kai heard this and nodded slightly. He looked a little surprised. Then he seemed to think of something and slowly spoke. At the end, he had a cold look on his face. Then he waved his right hand. Roar! Suddenly, the supernatural beasts behind them roared and rushed towards Yifeng. Seeing this scene, Huang and others were suddenly excited. Yifeng is dead. Then he quickly turned his gaze towards Yifeng, hoping to see Yifeng's panic movements or his appearance of running away in confusion. However, what made them dumbfounded and unbelievable was that not only did they not see Yifeng's behavior of panic and fear. Instead, he stood very calmly and pressed his summoner. Really? Could he really? Seeing this scene, Kulesk's pupils shrank. He said with a look of surprise and uncertainty. Yi Feng's words directly confirmed Kulesk's thoughts. Kulesk was a little frightened. I saw. Don't panic, although I now have mid-S level ultimate power. But I seem to have forgotten to tell you that the armor can actually be upgraded. This is just the initial form of Xingtian armor. I saw Yi Feng looking at the scene in front of him and smiling slightly. He spoke slowly. He looked unconcerned. After hearing these words, the faces of the Pope and others, who were originally excited, froze. The smile immediately froze, and a look of astonishment appeared on his face. Follow the craftsman. Not only them, but everyone could not help but be stunned when they heard this. A look of astonishment. Armor can also be upgraded. When Kulesk heard this, his expression darkened. Shocked the whole audience. Armor can actually be upgraded. This is just the initial form of Xingtian armor. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe my channel.